Sacred Symbols is brought to you by HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Go to HelloFresh.com/50sacred and use code 50sacred for 50% off plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/50sacred and use code 50sacred for 50% off plus free shipping.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 268. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my son, Chris Reagan. Chris, good day to you, my friend. How are you today?
I'm well. I've actually had some time to play some games, which is nice because I feel like the last like week or two have been just like, it's been so busy. We've just been recording so much and just doing a lot of video stuff. So it's nice to actually have like a slight break.
What have you been doing? Let me talk to me more about it.
Oh my God. There are certain things I don't want to get into specifically, but like there are some times where sponsors will be like, yeah, here's what you should do exactly. And they'll give you like an exact kind of rubric on what to do and what to write on screen for certain things. And then you do it. And then they're like, actually, that was a mistake. Can you undo that? And it's like, just so happens to be the most irritating, like most specifically annoying thing to re-edit because it involves having to refilm a bunch of stuff. So it's just that nonsense.
You tweeted something that I thought was interesting. Where is it? I've been a bit reclusive lately because I've been dissociating for like 2 months straight. Not sure why, because my life is probably the most stress-free it's been in years. What's going on here?
I don't know.
Talk to me about this.
I mean, I don't know. Like it says, I'm not sure why. I've just sort of, I don't know. I just find myself staring sometimes, like not really like, and it's weird. Like I said, it's just like I'm not really stressed out at all, but like I'm just sort of like, I think I function very well on stress. I think that might be a thing where it's like I've been stressed for so long that like that fire kind of kept me like going, and now like I don't have that, so I'm just kind of like, I don't know, slightly, I don't know, like I don't want to say unmotivated because that's like maybe like too specific or maybe not the right verbiage, but like there's something, I don't know, there's something off.
Do you feel phantom stress where you're like, I was stressed for the last week and now it's Friday and it's like I have a few days and I'm stressed even though there's no reason to be?
Yeah, maybe.
Just from like that in you know.
Yeah, maybe.
That used to happen to me a lot in college. A lot.
I've never thought about that. Phantom stress.
Yeah, never heard that term, but I know what you mean.
That's a really good. If that's not a real term, it should be.
I don't.
It's like
I've never like specifically called it that before. I was just trying to, think of. There's like it's like your body was in this state for so long that when it doesn't have that, it's like, oh, I kind of miss that pain and suffering. Let's just do that all the time.
Yeah. There might be something to that. That's a really amazing phrase.
Phantom stress. It's like the phantom pain.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a band name actually, but to me, I'm so used to being in a state of complete anxiety all the time that when I don't have something to worry about, I just find something to worry about. It's right. And I agree with you that it's I feel weird when I'm like, I have nothing to do and there's nothing to worry about and everything's okay. I mean, things are better than okay in a lot of different ways. I don't know. I'm the same way. I need to work under pressure, and I don't like being stressed, but I am always stressed and I work well under stress. So I think I'm just used to it. Yeah. In that sense.
Yeah.
Well, I feel it for you. And it's good to be here with you today, not dissociating with us.
Yeah.
Destin, executive producer. Welcome to the show, my friend. Good day to you and good to see you.
Hello. I'm doing all right today. My stomach felt a little messed up. Every once in a while. So my parents were here because they dropped their dogs off. They're going to Vegas. We're watching the dogs. We went to this like tap room place that opened up. I just had 2 beers and one of them was a small one. Woke up, I'm like, my tummy's not liking that, which is unfortunate because it just makes me feel like a bitch when that happens. But doing okay now, hanging out. And I got to say, earlier in the recording, I noticed I have some Switch games here on my speaker, and there's this Mario one. I want to show you this so it can bother you for the rest of your life. Let's see if my camera can zoom. Oh, no, not quite.
Not quite.
Can you see how the logo in the center is?
Hold it back a little more. Hold it back a little more.
Do you see how it's not centered, though?
I know. I see that it's not centered, yeah. Because the ESRB logo is pushing it over.
Yeah. This is the Super Mario 3D All-Stars. They were so lazy that the Switch cart has this horrible... It's truly awful. It's off-centered. It's to the one side. It's just...
Who cares? I mean, why do you even have that digitally? You know, this is the question, or physically. It's like, this is the whole thing.
Well, you can't. You can only play this.
Now you're worrying about the art on the cartridge. You know?
If you want to play this right now, good luck buying it on your digital storefront.
Oh, it's not available digitally?
No, not anymore.
Oh, they removed it. I bought some Mario collection.
Yeah, if you have it, you can still play it. But that was a timed store release. Nintendo just at their absolute worst, surprisingly somehow, always.
I have something. Hold on a sec.
It was for like a year, right?
Maybe not. I don't even know if it was a year. Honestly, it was. You can still find copies. They pop up all the time. But yeah, if you want to play it now, you got to get it physically.
You wanted these, right? You can't have them, but at least not right now. But
oh, I mean, I wouldn't seek them out, but if I found them, I would be super pleased. Yeah, those are a pretty penny.
Yeah.
Where'd you get those?
My friend John Longo, when that guy died, and then I went to the guy's house and took all the games out of there so they can read.
Oh,
he had these. Yeah.
Those are looted games.
Huh?
Those are looted games.
Yeah, they definitely are. And then the other thing I was excited, I found a lot of things in that guy's house that I wanted, but Zelda cart, not really anything crazy. I have a gold Zelda cart, but the cool thing about it is pristine instruction manual.
Oh yeah, those original, are good.
And then something I want to get framed actually, which is the map that came with it.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. Mm-hmm. Love that. Really, really excited about that. But I know you mentioned, I heard you on something recently where you talked about those Philips games.
Dude.
And
I'm so intrigued by those like shitty consoles in general, like CDI, 3DO. To some extent, I'm not saying it's shitty, but the Sega Saturn as well. But I can't break the seal on those because we're talking hundreds of dollars per game.
Oh, I bet.
For some,
were there like
do it.
5 3DO games anyway? I mean, it's you can. There's an audio game on 3DO if you have the gumption to go and get it.
Mm-hmm.
Way of the Warrior, which they made right before Crash Bandicoot. Well, it's good to be here with you guys, my friends, and it's here for Sacred Symbols, another week of PlayStation news. There's really not a lot going on this week. I mean, we have some news to get through. This is a very rare, if not pretty much unprecedented episode where there is no major news item. Like, you know, when I usually write things out and we read through it and we try to get into the nitty gritty, like nothing really happened this past week, but there's a lot of smaller news items. We're going to get through all of that. And of course, end our show with inquiries from the audience as we always do. Remember, you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. Just like Carlos Enrique Sierra wrote into us. I'm sure I said that with great Spanish inflection. He said, "Hey, CDC, just wanted to comment about last week's conversation on streaming services and LSM's value while only charging $5 a month. I've canceled all my subscription services as I barely open any of them and do not find good content anymore. LSM has become my main source of content, and I wanted to commend you guys for the consistency and quality of the content. Say content one more time. I appreciate all that you do and look forward every week to laughing my ass off while driving to and back from work. As a side note, I was happy to see the integration between Spotify and Patreon. Switching between music and ad-free LSM content has been amazing. Take care, guys, and keep it up. Love from Honduras." Thank you, Carlos, for writing in for the kind words. Yep, $5 a month is all it takes. You can spend actually a little less or a little more depending on the tier you want, but $5 a month is the most popular tier. We are at an all-time high on Patreon with 15,000 something subscribers. I have no idea what's going on over there right now. It's pretty amazing. And we really appreciate it. So thank you for supporting us. And we agree the $5 is a good deal. It's almost a crazy deal. You almost feel like you're being tricked. It's such a good deal. You could subscribe for $1 a month or $2 a month if you want. You just don't get as many perks. $5 a month, ad-free early access to every show we do, not only Sacred Symbols and Sacred Symbols Plus, but Defining Duke Ultimate, Constellation Knockback, Punching Up, etc. Recent Sacred Symbols Plus episodes include quite a few on Twisted Metal, so 2 on the TV show, 1 on the original game. Cog and I did one about our workout regimens and kind of encouraging people to get off the couch and earn your game time. I sat down with my friends, John Garvin and Michael Membauer from Lethos, to talk to them about what they're doing over there with Trace War. We did an episode, obviously, all about Final Fantasy 16 and much more. Corey Savas wrote in and said, "I just wanted to write in and say that LSM has been putting out fantastic content recently, more so than usual. It's been great to hear more of Jaffe and Garvin and Mumbauer. Colin, what are the chances of putting together a working at PlayStation retrospective with Jaffe, Garvin, and possibly Druckmann or others to talk about the early days of Sony and what it was like in the industry at the time? Well, Druckmann, unlikely for two reasons. One is he's not going to do anything without PR permission, I don't think. And two, he wasn't there during the early era of PlayStation. He joined PlayStation during the development of Jak 3, I want to say. So in the mid-aughts. So he wasn't there quite as long, although it'd be fun to talk to him about a series of other things as well. And I really, really appreciate that. I said already, merch can be found, laststandmedia.store. Ken Martin wrote in. It said, "Dear Sacred Crew, it finally happened. A few months ago, I wanted a Sacred Symbols baseball hat. I taught myself how to embroider a patch and stitched it on. I wear it most days, hoping to receive a stand down in the wild. The other day, I was leaving my shift at work and passed a guy I've seen a lot over the years. He told me, 'Nice hat.' I was confused at first, as no one ever comments on my hat. When I excitedly asked if he listened, I was immediately given a stand down. Shout out to Dominic. It made my week. If you, like me, are searching for a sacred sibling in the wild, keep looking. We are out here. Thank you all for fostering an awesome community and have strangers connect all over a fun hobby." Thank you. Writing in. Make your own merch if you want. I don't care. Take our logos and do what you want. If you don't want to buy our official merch at laststandmedia.store, I just ask that you don't sell it. You can make whatever you want, though. Let's see here. Is there one more? Oh, and an hour after this goes live on Patreon, so when most of you are hearing this, you can, if quantities are still available, buy Super Perils of Baking, Lily Mo's most recent game in physical format, 500 copies only, $34.99 USD. We will ship anywhere in the US, Canada, Mexico, places in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and so on and so forth. So go check that out. James Walker wrote in and said, "How do you do, fellow collectors? No question, just appreciation that without your business revolving around it or any dire need, Last Stand was able to create, source, and ship a collector's edition in less than 12 months. I previously ordered such editions from Limited Run and they took almost a year. Hell, my KOTOR 2 standard edition took almost 10 months. Just wanted to show some appreciation for those who know how to run a business right. Peace. Thank you." 10 months is short for limited run games, dude. I like I said, I got a Castlevania game in the mail and I'm like, when did I even order this? I don't even remember buying this. You know, and I was like, this must have been, I don't know. So the sad thing about it is we could have done it way quicker. It really didn't need to take this long. That's the thing that should annoy you the most. It's like when I tell people about game codes, like from PR. Yeah. And they're like, "We don't have any codes to accommodate you." Hey, I have a fucking bad piece of news for you. If you get that email from them, they're lying to you. Because you get thousands of codes automatically generated when you put a game up. You could just send them out to everyone that you've ever met in your entire life. And this is another one of those things. They're lying to you about why it's taking so long. They're getting so far ahead. They're using the money, likely from your order of Castlevania, let's say, to fill 10 games back. I don't want to say it's a Ponzi scheme, but I just think that that's the way they do it. And so we could have done it stem to stern in probably 2 months, I think, from the spark of the idea, East Asia Soft publishing the games for us in Hong Kong, sending them to us, and then us sending it out. Yeah, no problem at all. Glad to do it. I don't know why companies take so long to fulfill their orders. It's fucking annoying. When you buy Super Perils physically, you might get it within a few days of when you buy it, but you will get it no later than a few weeks probably after you buy it. So that's another thing too. We kind of have a limited staging area in here, and these boxes are taking up a lot more room than you might expect. So, by the way, I hand wrote all of the collectors, like 1 out of 500, 2 out of 500, 3. I hand wrote all of that. I messed 3 of them up. I don't remember which ones. It was like two in the 200s and 1 in the 400s. So I wrote a note on them and signed those as well. So maybe you'll get one of those. I don't know.
That's a good move.
Yeah,
we did that in Houston a little bit. Someone signed the poster as Maddie that we gave. Was that you, Chris? Someone got a signed poster that says Maddie. Signed it, but it was Chris.
Yeah, that was me. Yeah.
No one ever said anything. So I was always curious about that.
Yeah, I think there were like, I don't know how many posters we signed, but like every big chunk of posters would pass, and I would get like kind of like cheeky, and I'd be like, I should put something weird here. And I think I said, I think I signed under Maddie's like, "Sorry, I died" or something for one person. So like someone's got that poster. That's fun. I like that.
Yeah.
Mike and I were talking, like, when I messed the 2 of them up, I'm like, I'll figure. And then I realized, I'm like, we ordered exactly 500 of them. Why didn't we order like 520 or something like that? You know?
They won't. I don't think Vistaprint lets you. Not Vistaprint. Who was it? I don't remember. I remember the quantities were specific. Like it was either that or ordering 750 or something.
Yeah, we don't
like
want that. We don't want that.
No.
Well, thank you guys all for your support on Patreon with merch, lastnamemedia.store, and so on and so forth. Couldn't do without you. Glad you're enjoying the shows. Like I said, we're at an all-time high, and that's all because of you. Thank you for making us such an awesome success. And by the way, if you're interested in external content with any of us in it, I did a 3-hour interview with Xbox 2+1, the Xbox podcast. That's on their Patreon right now, but it'll go live for everyone in the coming days. And I think you'll really enjoy that podcast as we go through a bunch of different topics. It was a lot of fun. It's good to talk about games at a very high level. I like talking about games that way. But let's begin our episode now by getting into subtopics of discussion and stretch our legs a little bit. Rob Pursglove wrote into us and said, "Hey, CDC, Colin will probably not choose this to hide his shame. Get fucked, Rob. Last week he said Far Cry 5 was better than God of War with no sign of an explanation. You can't keep getting away with this. Dustin, Chris, please do something." There's nothing you can do about it. That's the beautiful part is there's nothing you can do about it. What are you going to do?
What does he want us to do?
I don't understand what I'm supposed to do either.
I don't know.
Just point out every single time I disagree with somebody. I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm going to brush my beard.
What is the expectation that like what are we're just supposed to quit this show? Just like leave mid-show. It's like, sorry, I can't abide by this.
You can't prove God of War is better than Far Cry 5, right?
Yeah, well, also I haven't played Far Cry 5, like not in its entirety. Like I really like I have strong doubts, but like I don't know for sure. Like I can't possibly. So I mean, and it's also I don't know, man. It's a subject. It's so inherently subjective. You know, like what are we supposed to? I don't know. It seems insane that the implication is that action needs to be taken.
Wolfenstein: The Old Blood is better than Uncharted 4. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Nothing. Nothing.
No, I was disagreeing. I wasn't saying nothing. I mean, there's nothing to actually disagreeing with and saying there's nothing you can do about the tape.
Yeah.
I will platinum Saints Row before I ever even look at a screenshot of that new Zelda game. How's that?
You're lost.
Oh man, you know, God bless.
Go for it.
God bless. You know,
I downloaded last night Alan Wake Remastered. I think it's time to get into it because Mike is leaving this weekend. She's going home to Massachusetts to go shopping with her sister for her what would you call it, her maid of honor dress, I guess. We're not really doing a traditional thing where we have wedding parties. Like my brother is my best man, her sister is her maid of honor. We're not doing anything else like that. I do feel a little bit bad about that though, because I was in 4 wedding parties, you know? So like you kind of should reciprocate. I was actually in 5. I was in my brother's and my brother-in-law's, but then I was in my friend Mike Pope's. I was in Nate Ahern's, who will be at the wedding. I'm really excited to see him. Old Xbox guy, a good friend of mine, very good friend of mine. And who else? Oh, and I was in, let me see. That might be it. No, there's one more. Oh, Mike Pope, Nate Ahern will come to me. Nonetheless, I have, like, I feel like I should be paying these people back, but I'm, you know, because you're kind of, but then it gets too out of control. You know, some of these people have like wedding parties of like fucking 8 people. Sometimes they're uneven. You know, I do like the wedding party. I was very good friends with a girl named Abby in college. We don't really talk too much anymore. Not for any other reason. We just, you know, went our separate ways, but we were really tight, like very, very, very good friends. And we used to talk in college about how she would be in my wedding party and I would be in her wedding party. And that kind of stuff I like. Not wearing a dress. I mean, you could wear a dress if you want, but I would wear like a suit. The girl would be in the, you know, she would be in my wedding party wearing a dress. Kind of like that kind of thing. Very 21st century. You know? Explicit instructions to Micah that I gave, though. She's taking my last name, which I think is totally fine. That was not important to me. I was like, whatever you want to do is cool with me. But I said there are only 2 options. You either keep your name or you take my name. We're not doing the hyphenated shit. This isn't 1995 and we're not doing it.
Yeah.
You know? Like I had a friend, Eric, when I was a kid, whose mom they were married, his mom and dad, but she didn't take his name. They was very like 2nd generation feminist. And so I used to call her Mrs. Whatever, but it wasn't really her name. She used to go by the maiden name. Mike is going to go by my name, but no hyphens.
Yeah, good.
No hyphens.
It's too much.
It's way too much.
It's too much. Also, that means she's going to have like a supervillain name. Mm-hmm. She's going to have like that alliteration going on, that comic book alliteration. No.
Definitely. It's going to be awesome. We said on the show that we are dead ass about thinking about if we have a son, naming him Moriarty.
That's so
Just 'cause
funny.
it's
Mhm.
I mean,
It's just so fun. It's just so funny to me.
My question about the hyphenation is that it puts in a potential of a generational problem. So let's say you have a kid, let's say if you were doing this, right? It would be Moriarty Watson.
Mm-hmm.
And then Maury goes out and gets married to someone also very progressive, and they want to hyphenate their name.
Oh man. Now
What
you're
do you
getting into one of those Spanish like monarch names.
Yeah.
That go on for like 15 or 20 seconds.
Which and those are, I don't know, man. Those sound cool because they're in Spanish, but the second they're like English sounding words, it doesn't work nearly as well.
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy.
Micah, I like Micah. Micah's last name is Watson, and what's funny is the Moriarty Watson connection from Sherlock Holmes. But what's more interesting is that she's going to take on the Moriarty mantle. She's becoming the bad guy.
Yeah.
Of course, Moriarty is the bad guy in Sherlock Holmes. I used to get that so much, by the way, remember when there was like a renaissance of Sherlock Holmes?
Like
Because
2008?
the BBC show.
Well, the BBC show was later. It was the movies.
You're talking
first.
about the Robert Downey
RDJ.
Jr. movies. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Right. And then in the first season of the show, Moriarty is actually, there's an awesome scene. I clipped it out back in the day, but it was on an old phone and I lost it, where I think the last season ends with him going, Moriarty! And then like it I was like, yes, this is awesome. But ever since, during that era, it's kind of gone away now, but during that era, everyone like, oh, Professor Moriarty? Professor Moriarty?
Oh man.
Shut up, losers. Thank you for writing in, Rob. Superhero Jagannath wrote in, said, greetings, sacred scholars. Colin, as a longtime fan of Symphony of the Night, who has never played another Castlevania game, I decided to take the plunge and play through the whole series, starting with the original NES games. Ooh. I've made it through the first and second games now, and I must say my experience has been significantly enhanced by the use of our very own C. Moriarty guides on GameFAQs. Your guide for the first game was helpful in terms of locating the secrets and dealing with the hard as hell bosses, especially Death, who can eat a dick. Oh, Death is tough. That's why you got to hold on to the holy water. But where it really shone was in Simon's Quest, in which I probably would have wandered around aimlessly for hours if you hadn't explained where to go, what to buy, etc. Just wanted to shout out to young Colin for helping a neophyte of the series get into it decades later. You're very welcome. Dude, I love that these things are still getting used by people. Love it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I wrote this shit in 10th grade. It's so I wrote the Castlevania 2 guide by hand and then transcribed it because my computer, I've told the story in the past how I had this very cosmic karmic moment where it was in the very early CDR stages, like CDR 1.0x or whatever, like where it would take like, all day to copy a CD, but you could do it. And my friend Kevin had one, and we used to go to 112 Video, which was a video store on Long Island, rent 10 PS1 games at a time, and then just go copy them.
Oh yeah.
And then bring them back. And it was so blatant what we were doing. They didn't give a shit at all. And one of those trips, there was a rainstorm, and my modem got fried in the rainstorm. Not even my computer, but my modem, and it wouldn't connect online anymore. So I just had this brick in my room for months while we were waiting to get it fixed, because it was a little more specialized back then. And so I actually found the notebook not too long ago, and it's in my attic. I wrote it by hand. It's like crazy that I did that. And then I went on my dad's computer and like typed it all up, put it up there for you.
That's nuts.
Yeah. No, that was what I was doing as a child for no reason, by the way.
I mean, I don't know. I guess it is how things have been done for a long time. People did write a lot of stuff. I mean, I write some of my videos by hand and still sometimes like, but that's more like fleshing out like bullet points and like I have the notepad here with a bunch of like video ideas scraggled onto stuff because it's easier to process through ideas if you write them down, I think, like with a pen. I don't know why I feel that way.
Well, it's funny you say that because I'm as everyone knows, I bring it up all the time. It's an old thing, but I'm a prodigious note keeper. But what I had started doing specifically with Knockback is trying to use my computer to take the notes, and it's just so much quicker, but it's also more distracting because then I need to just get like an old, remember the company Brother, like the electronics company? I just got to get like a Brother word processor.
Yeah, where that's all it does.
Yeah, like where it's just literally there's no like nothing else that it can possibly do. Kind of like Cormac McCarthy, R.I.P., used to write on a typewriter until his death, which is fucking crazy. And maybe that explains why he was never following the rules of grammar.
I feel like even that thing wouldn't even because I really do think a lot of it is muscle memory and like the physicality of what you're doing. So even if you are typing on something that isn't connected to the internet, it's still going to remind you of a computer. You know what I mean? It's still going to remind you of like, oh, I should check Twitter or whatever the hell.
Yeah.
Whereas writing is like it's very isolating. It's like a very like if you are writing something that is all you're doing.
This might be a bad suggestion, but George R.R. Martin, I'm pretty sure I read this once and I looked it up. It's true. He uses a DOS computer using WordStar 4.0.
Oh, wow.
To type
Yeah.
stuff out. So if you want to have a show note ready for 3 years from now,
I was
or
about to
10,
say.
hell, I mean, you could start there. That might be something to think about.
I was about to say, I bet that's a really productive way of going about it.
Yeah.
One thing I did write when we were writing Twin Breaker was I wrote the whole intro by hand.
Oh, wow.
And then I took pictures of it and I just sent it to Barry and the guys. So
that's cool.
But yeah, it's the only other thing I ever wrote by hand for our games was I wrote our dialogue by hand for Twin Breaker on a yellow pad just because it was so easy to write that kind of back and forth. I don't know what we're even talking about though. Superhero Jagnath, thank you for writing it. Glad those old facts are working for you still. I love specifically on GameFAQs, and people can go click around. I love stuff that's on there from the late 80s or early 90s, before GameFAQs or even the World Wide Web existed, but old documents that were shared around on Usenet and then uploaded to early GameFAQs. That stuff is digitally, archaeologically interesting to me. It's like some of the earliest saved documents. It's crazy. It'll be like a document for an NES game, and it'll be like 1988. And it's like that. Some people realize like how wild that is, that still exists. The World Wide Web didn't even exist at that point.
Yeah.
So I love that kind of stuff so much. And GameFAQs is like one of the last repositories of those old documents with people's like old cryptic email addresses that don't work anymore. And I love that stuff, man. Shout out to GameFAQs. Glad it's still trucking on. Okay, what else here? I scrolled down too far. There we go.
Sacred Symbols is brought to you by HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. It's hard to believe, but fall is already right around the corner, and HelloFresh is here to help you plan for the busy season ahead with tasty dishes delivered right to your door. Simply choose your recipes and pick your delivery date. Then just sit back, relax, play some games, and enjoy the last days of summer knowing dinner is covered. I know I tend to be pretty much always hungry, and with HelloFresh, I can add snacks, sides, and more to my weekly HelloFresh order. Just simply shop HelloFresh Market and take your pick from a curated selection of over 100 add-on items. I love HelloFresh because there's tons of great options and even ones that work for both Holly and I since she's lactose intolerant. Also, HelloFresh totally comes in and saves the day when we can't figure out the right time to go to the grocery store. Go to HelloFresh.com/50sacred and use code 50sacred for 50% off plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/50sacred and use code 50sacred for 50% off plus free shipping.
Brian Borlaug wrote in, said, "Hey boys, I'm about to head out on a family excursion to my hometown in Havre, Montana, Havre. I don't know. I'll be forcing my family to listen to this podcast while we're stuck in the car for the final leg. Can we get a shout out to Fiona and Parker Borlaug? They're definitely appreciated, as I'm sure they're bored as hell in the middle of nowhere. As always, thanks for the fantastic content. Are they bored as hell in the middle of nowhere, or are they bored as hell because this show is on?"
Oh, man.
I mean, it's like it's a double whammy probably for them.
Now, we don't know a lot about Brian, but can we assume this is his wife and son?
Sure.
Wife and brother, because they are going home. Maybe, I don't know what could be.
Maybe it's his daughter and his daughter's kid.
Whoa. Okay.
Whoa.
And he's the grandpa.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah, why not?
So, well, okay, Chris, you drive, but you don't do too many car trips. When I'm on trips, I do subject Holly to listening to podcasts that I know she doesn't care about. But that's just kind of the agreement that's like, hey, when I drive, we'll listen to whatever I want. And when you drive, whatever you want. But
right.
So I don't know. Do you think that that's a fair rule for the road?
I don't know. I rarely travel with other people. And when I do, I typically default to music. I don't think I've never listened to a podcast in the car with another person because I feel like it's too much of a of a commitment to force somebody else into.
Right.
And I also just don't want to. I also just don't want to have the conversation. I don't want to have the conversation of like, what podcast do you want to listen to? What are you okay with? Like, no, it's
if
a lot
it was
easier.
a communal experience of listening, then yeah, I can see that being a little weird.
Yeah, if I was married, I would assume we would have this conversation. Like this would be something that we would talk about, or I would bring headphones and say to listen to something while I listen to this.
Right.
If it bothers you so goddamn much.
I think that I don't drive, as you guys know, so I've always found it awkward when people are like, oh, put on what you want. I'm like, no.
Okay.
I mean, I will, but I've always accepted this is your domain, my friend.
Yeah, that's the thing about the car, man. Like the car is like, I have a really, I don't want to say a love-hate relationship with car. My relationship with cars is complicated. I don't like that so much of the country is dependent on them. I don't like that city planning and like town planning revolves around the necessity of owning a car. I think it's vaguely parasitic. This thing that just depreciates in value constantly and just is constantly needing maintenance and is constantly being recalled. And you got to do this and you got to do that. And it's just sapping money out of you. And they could have just easily built a supermarket closer to you and you wouldn't have to need it. But I do like that it's your own like tiny apartment, like away from everything else. And you can kind of just like I blast my music at like top volume in the car, like with the windows up, like just like encased in sound. And the thing that frustrates me all the time is that like whenever I'm driving with another person, I know that I can't exist the way I would if I was alone in that car. Whereas like I can't listen to music as loud as I normally would because you're here. And I know either you're going to complain or I'm going to physically hurt you because it's so fucking loud that you will go deaf. I'm surprised I'm not currently.
Dude, you just got to find someone who also likes it that loud and the same music, like,
yeah, but that's the thing.
It's a rare experience. Like, I remember you're listening to like Dashboard Confessional. You got that real loud on the back roads. Very, the emo era. It was good times. You just got to find someone like that, but with
Screaming infidelity.
Everyone knows, man. Dude, great song.
But the thing is, my Spotify playlist is so schizophrenic because it's like Weird Al. It's a film score. It's Devin Townsend. It's intervals, and then it's Dashboard Confessional, and then it's like a mess. It's like a complete. And I love that. I love no one's going to have that same taste as me, and then also. No one is going to have that same taste in me and be okay with listening to that at a volume that's going to shake their cerebral cortex. You know what I mean?
I imagined if I was walking in the street of LA and I see a stoplight, I see Chris Ray Gun sitting. He's got a totally mute face, but the song Albuquerque is playing at full volume. just full blast, like a psycho, like you're just like, yep. You can hear it's like one of those ones that's like rumbling. You can hear like the outside of the car.
Yeah. The street is cracking beneath the car.
Yeah,
because it's so damn loud.
That'd be good.
Your hair is everywhere,
dude.
When I was in, I don't know, like in college, I was like, man, that's so fucking deep.
Yeah, dude, that hits. Dude, at the time, man, I still love those albums personally. But
do you guys?
Yeah, I like that too.
Have you guys had the experience of like, because I feel like I have this conversation with a lot of people, and it's interesting how many people feel differently than me. With like, I listen to some of the music that I grew up listening to, and I don't hate it. Like I haven't outgrown it really. Like I still like pretty much. Like over 95% of the music that I used to listen to in like high school and stuff. Like I still like it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's not the experience that a lot of people have.
Are you here, Micah? Is someone at the door? Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Whoa.
Because the dogs are freaking out. Someone rang the doorbell.
Yeah. Anything could happen. So, Chris, here's how I feel about that. There are some artists that I look back at now, and I'm like, this is nowhere near as deep or as serious as I thought it was. But I still like it because it's nostalgic at that point. I think about the first Simple Plan album, and I was like,
"Oh, Simple Plan!"
In like
MTV pushed them so hard. I remember.
Yeah, in 6th or 7th grade, and you're like, "Wow, man, this really hits. And now I listen to him like these guys sound like fucking idiots, but I love it still. It's
Dude,
just
this is a major point of contention with Ramon and I,
oh,
because Ramon is a very sophisticated, like I say, professional working musician, but he really doesn't want to listen to or acknowledge any of the stuff we used to love. Like he just feels embarrassed by a lot of that stuff, I think, or something. And I listen to it and I'm like, I still love this shit, dude. That first Saliva record comes on when I'm working out. I'm like, fuck yeah, dude. Yeah. And I'm going all the way. You got to get that rap rock in there, you know? Yeah. And then like, there's some things that I don't quite like. Disturbed, I don't really want to listen to anymore. But when like Seven Dust comes on, or Mudvayne, or Linkin Park or something, I love that shit still to this day. And Dashboard was I always had an very eclectic musical taste. Always. So Dashboard was amongst that. Breathe in for luck.
Yeah, dude.
Breathe in. Yeah. So
I don't know,
deep.
man. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird.
I met him once.
Chris Carrabba.
Yeah, I saw him. He was on tour with
Mr. Dashboard. Mr. Dashboard.
Mr. Dashboard.
Well, Chris Carrabba is Dashboard Confessional, isn't it? Isn't he one of the same? Like,
yeah,
he is
pretty much. Yeah. I saw him because they were he was on tour with the band before he was in Dashboard, called Further Seems Forever, which if anyone has not checked them out, they rule. And when I met him, this was when I was in college. I was like, yeah, the last time I saw you was when I saw Dashboard Confessional when I was in second grade in 2002. And he did not like that I said that very much, in a joking, like he wasn't actually mad, but it was funny. Nice guy.
Last 10 songs I added to Spotify. Last 10 bands. Supertramp, The Offspring, Sheryl Crow, Three Doors Down, Helmet, Trust Company, Phil Collins, Laura Branigan, Sinead O'Connor, Sister Hazel.
My dad's a big Helmet fan.
What'd you say?
My dad's a big Helmet fan.
Oh, I love Helmet, dude.
Yeah,
it's not really the same band anymore. It's just a singer with like a new group. But I love. I used to love Helmet.
That's so fun. What Offspring track did you recently add?
Pretty Fly for a White Guy. I started listening because I really only listened to those first two records, or there's more than that. But I listened to, what was it? Ixnay on the Hombre.
Yeah.
And the one before that, Smash. And so I never. The one that it's Americana, the one with Pretty Fly for a White Guy, that came out when I was in 9th grade, and I actually really liked that song, but I didn't have money to buy every album at that point, so I kind of just came by. And so recently it came up, and I was listening to it. I'm like, yeah, some pretty good songs.
I actually think some of their like 2008 to 2012 stuff isn't that bad either. Like I think there's some pretty good stuff in there, I think.
I like them. I think you guys will know this. I'm pretty sure this is true, that they were a very early example of selling their entire license of songs to a company. Like as I understand it, Offspring doesn't own their back catalog at all. I think they have permission to play it without royalties. But when you hear a song, like if they put like, you know, Pretty or Keep Them Separated or whatever in a movie, I don't think they make that money anymore. I think they sold it. I think they sold it for a lot of money, like hundreds of millions of dollars.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I was fascinated by that. I'm like, that's so interesting.
I'm looking at my Spotify and looking at the last couple bands that I added, and it's so all over. It's D12.
Oh,
Seal.
Wow.
The Vines, Dream Theater, Matchbox 20, The Bangles.
Wow.
What
Bangles? Egyptian? Walk Like an Egyptian?
Yeah, Walk Like an Egyptian.
Oh, I love that song.
And Roxette.
Mm-hmm. Oh, she's got the look?
Listen to Your Heart, which I didn't know was a Roxette song. Like that's so crazy because like I grew up thinking like that was like a Kelly Clarkson song.
Oh, okay.
Because she covered it, and that was like all over on the radio when I was like a kid. So I was like, I don't want to listen to that.
I like Roxette.
Yeah, Roxette's great. But yeah,
I think the female singer in that band got sick or something like that.
Oh, maybe
point. Yeah.
But D12 and Seal next to each other is very fun.
D12, dude. I loved D12 for a little while, like during the kind of Marshall Mathers LP, Slim Shady LP, and then into D12.
Yeah, the song that I put in, the song that I added was My Band, by the way.
Oh, that's like, that was like the big one.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, that's a funny one.
It's ridiculous.
All right. Shout out to Spotify, by the way. Love it.
Yeah. It's great.
Love it. See, actually, this came up on the Xbox 2+1 podcast. We were talking about the differences of subscription models. And I was saying music subscriptions don't get a pass from me specifically because it never subsumed the primary way that the bands make their money anyway, which is through touring and merch. That has always been true. And I was saying that Spotify has created an environment where there are more tours and more festivals than ever. including Helmet. Like when I was listening to Helmet before, I got a thing saying like, "Oh, go see Helmet," and I'm like, I'm not going to go see the singer of Helmet with a new band, but I appreciate the offer. Thank you.
Oh
All right.
man.
One last question. I'm curious what you guys think of this. This is from Whoopie77. Says, "Hey y'all, what's the best form of potato? Baked, fries, mashed, tots, shredded, cubed? Or when you're talking about cubed, you're talking about like hash browns or potatoes O'Brien, perhaps, if you like them like that. Listen, the potato, the humble potato, as they call it in French, the apple of the earth, pomme de terre, right? It is good shit in any real way, except for, and I'm going to say this with a little bit of confidence, we got to nix the baked potato.
Oh,
Nix it.
What's wrong with it?
It's too simple. What am I in fucking colonial America? You're gonna cut a little slice in a potato and then just put it in an oven. You got to do something to it.
It does kind of feel like a Zelda meal where you just like throw an apple into a skillet and that's like somehow enjoyable. I don't know. Like I feel like this is a controversial statement, what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
But I really do not care for mashed potatoes at all.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. Yeah, that is crazy.
Like I don't.
Wow.
I don't feel like you're getting it made right or something.
Well, I've had it and it's good. Like it's not like I hate it. It's just more like I would rather. I can't. It's a texture thing for me where it's like I can't get the feeling that like this is potatoes that have been digested already. Like it's a really intrusive kind of thing in my brain where it's like someone chewed this up and spit it out onto your plate and you're eating it again. I know that's not what's happening, but like like I don't know, man. It's like a nails on a chalkboard, but with like taste or texture specifically.
Actually, that is where it came from. An Irish peasant in the 1700s was chewing up their potatoes and spitting it into their babies' mouths like a bird.
Yeah, like a bird. It's so. Oh, it's what
I made that up.
That's absolutely true. I can corroborate that. I just think it feels like one of those
first-hand witness.
Yeah. No, it's I don't know. It really is just something about it, and it reminds me of I don't know, like applesauce or like these other things where it's like I have teeth.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't like I'll have mashed potatoes and all this other like all this other stuff when I have to, like when I can physically not chew anymore because it would destroy my mouth. Then I will succumb to mashed potatoes. But like, I don't know. Until then, I'm perfectly happy with like fries and you know baked potatoes and tots and tots I don't know, dude. Like I don't know, fucking all sorts of shit that I can chew.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Colin, I have to agree. The potato is just one of the most ultimate, forms of food. It's so versatile, and pretty much all these listed here, I think, are all excellent. I gotta probably say that. My favorite, it's boring, but it's the French fry, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Fries are great.
I think
top
about
tier, honestly.
Dude, all kinds of fries. You get, like McDonald's fries. They're kind of like, very clean cut. Then you get the ones that you get at like a fair, the nasty, greasy fries. And I say nasty affectionately. I seek that out, like the nasty, greasy with cheese and bacon on it. I love that. Sure. That's good. I can't abide by one thing, though, in the world of potatoes, and that is every once in a while, maybe you go to a diner that isn't as nice, or maybe it's a weird time of day. You get some of the hash browns that are like the little cubed, or not hash browns, you know what I mean? The home fries, that's it.
Right.
And you take a bite, and you can tell it's just not quite done enough. It's almost like biting an apple with a few pieces. Yeah. I can't, any kind of undercooked potato, I'm not there for it. It's gotta be smooth. So that's kind of the only contingent I have. But now, as far as the baked potato, Colin, what about the aspect of it being loaded up with all kinds of stuff?
It's good, but that's the whole point. Is like, what are you doing to this thing to make it palatable? Really, like, there's just so many better ways to slice a potato. As well, But also, someone brought up potato chips. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh, dude. Oh, man.
Hell
Come on.
Yeah, potatoes are just really, really special. What's so fascinating about the potato is that they're endemic to North America. This is where they're from. And we exported them to Europe. And then they became really important to Europe later. Similar to how horses came. Like, we're always like, oh, Indians and horses. But Indians didn't have horses until the Europeans came here. A little bit of what they call the cross-Columbian exchange as things go back and forth. STDs and other diseases go back and forth. Animals, plants. That's what I love about the tomato as well. The tomato, which is indelibly instilled in Italian cuisine, is from North America and migrated to Italy during the Columbian exchange. I love that kind of stuff. So interesting.
Is it true that you hear like in school that some kids like, oh, they didn't used to eat tomatoes. They thought they were poisonous for years, for decades.
Yeah, I've heard that. I don't know anything about that though. Yeah,
I don't know either. You made me think of that, thinking about the ancient tomato, and that seems odd, like a wives' tale or something. So
I think this might be a wives' tale, but I think that there's a theory that Marco Polo brought noodles to Italy.
Oh,
hence pasta. So a little bit of cultural exchange there.
Sure.
Which I really dig. What are we talking about here? Potatoes. French fries, obviously dominant. See, the thing about the mashed potato, you got to get them made right. There's all sorts of good mashed potatoes and there's all sorts of bad mashed potatoes. But when you have mashed potatoes and it's just a ton of butter, maybe like really coarse black pepper in it, garlic in it, something like that, you can kill it, man. Kill it. Yeah.
It's not the taste. It's just, to me, like when I get that taste in mashed potatoes, I'm like, damn, this would taste really good on like a fry. You know what I mean? Like I would really have a great time with this if this exact flavor was just in something that wasn't completely fucking digested in front of me. Like, I don't know.
Chris, does that also apply to other similar foods of the similar, type of
texture?
Yeah, like applesauce.
100%.
That's what you said. Yeah, applesauce. You said it earlier. Although,
yeah.
I love applesauce as well. I don't really seek it out, but it's good. Maybe I'll have it like once a year at Thanksgiving or something.
There's some things that I let it slide because it's so good. Like stuff like this is very specific, but like farina and stuff like that. Like I don't know if you guys have had that at all, but I don't even know if that's what you would call it, because that might be like a Spanish word for it. But like farina is really good. I think it's just like cream of wheat or something, where it's like. I like that stuff, but that's also like nostalgic for me, I think, because my grandmother used to make it. So I think that's more of like a mental thing. Whereas like
Puerto Rico.
As my family would say it, Puerto Rico. With a little L in there.
Puerto. My Spanish is getting pretty elite.
Are you doing Duolingo?
No, I'm not. I will never speak Spanish as long as I live. If there's anything, I gotta extract the French out of my head before I ever.
Ayúdame.
Dude, okay, here, I gotta talk. You mentioned Duolingo. First, my dad was doing Duolingo for Spanish, and now Holly's doing Duolingo for Japanese, and I just can't stand all the sounds going on.
Anyone the little bell.
Yeah. Ba-ding, ba-ding, over and over.
Yeah.
Anyone out there knows, if you live with someone who's a Duolingo user, I feel for you, because it's just all the time I hear this sound, this ba-ding, ba-ding, over and over. I'm losing my mind. It is
unironically like a really useful tool for like it is actually like a really good way to learn a language, but it, like the sound design of it is really annoying. Like it is very infuriating to hear, and that pretentious owl shows up, that piece of shit always comes up, judges the shit out of you.
Babbel.com/sacred. BABBEL.com/SACRED.
That's right.
Ooh.
Yeah, you guys are going to Japan.
We are, yeah.
Oh, really?
As they say in Street Fighter. Yeah, are you excited? Yeah. September's a really good time to go.
Yes. Yeah, it's soon. I'm really excited. To be honest, now that I've kind of gotten a lot of things in order, I was feeling really stressed about it. Just there's a lot to take in as far as, there's the language barrier. You got to get around on the train, and I've never done anything.
You got to get your Suica card.
Dude, they're sold. They don't have them right now.
Oh,
this is very recent.
One if you need it. It probably still works.
You can use it now. You can just sign up for one on your phone. So,
okay, cool.
But there's like the rail pass if you're going to ride the bullet train around, which I realize we don't need that.
Yeah, I never left the Tokyo area, so you're going to do a lot more than I did.
Yeah, we're going to Tokyo, and then we're going over to Kyoto for a bit.
Oh wow!
And then we'll go to Osaka and hit Nintendo World and stuff like that.
It's just like a vacation thing, or what's that's awesome.
I told Colin this. I actually think I remember being at your house in 2019 and saying like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna hopefully go to Japan next year." And
in Santa Monica, you were saying?
What was that?
In Santa Monica, you said this?
No, this was at your house in in Richmond. No, I guess it wouldn't have been. No, I must have told you that we were planning in 2020. Anyway, we wanted to go in 2020 for a long time, and then they shut down the country for years and years. So now that it's open, it's just the right time. So we're not doing any kind of like tour that someone sets up for us or anything. We're doing it all ourselves, but it's been so affordable, actually. Like I booked almost every night, which we're using Airbnb, and one of the Airbnbs is technically a hotel. Overall, less than $100 a night to stay.
Nice.
Which is just
the dollar is you're gonna go far there. Right now.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Are you flying into Narita or Haneda? Or Haneda, I think it is.
Yeah, Haneda. Yeah, we're flying there, which is good because it's closer in the city. I flew to Narita, which is like the one in the suburbs. Yeah, but it's cheaper to go there, I think. Yeah, and we're staying in Shinjuku, which is where Yakuza takes place. Not in the red light district, but right, like in that part of the city.
Cool.
So
you're gonna have fun. You're gonna go to Electric Town.
Electric Town. I don't know about this. Oh yeah. I've never heard it called Electric Town before.
I think that's what it called. That's literally what it translates to.
It translates. Yeah. Akihabara is really close. It's like just since we're in the southern part of Shinjuku, it's just right down there. So
Super Potato,
the One Piece, the Mugiwara shop. Chris, I'll go there, get you a souvenir.
Go to the Gundam. The life-size Gundam.
They have a partial life-size Eva unit in Kyoto that you can go to. So that's where I'll be. It's like a part of a park that is designed around Evangelion. So that's going to be very cool.
EGS retro game. I wrote a piece my last time at Tokyo Game Show. I'm trying to see if I can find it. Shopping for old school games in Tokyo's Akihabara. I'm putting it in here. So there might be stuff that's interesting for you in there.
Super Potato is still there. I know that it's of those stores, it's usually the most pricey, but they have the most pristine condition and they have the best selection. So you got to pay up a little bit for that. But dude, look at all these Mega Man games in here, Colin.
Yeah, I own all those. I bought them all. Like if you click on, I don't know if it gets any bigger. It probably doesn't. The cool thing about Super Potato, if you zoom in on those, is a lot of the bigger games, like hundreds of the bigger games, have these specialized pieces of art on them, which is so cool that they made with the pricing. And it's so awesome.
It's so
Super Potato is
cheap,
a total tourist trap for gamers, but it's a must visit for sure.
Oh yeah.
You can get cheaper. You can get cheaper stuff. Like I'm looking at this now. It's so funny. If you find these like mom and pop off the beaten path stores, which is like where a lot of these pictures come from, you can get amazing deals. They just have fucking boxes of shit, just things that are not even put away.
Dude,
I love that stack of Famicoms that's in the article too. Just a million Famicoms just sitting there. Yeah.
It's so funny comparing the US retro market to Japan. First of all, just stuff is in such good condition, but I was seeing some YouTube videos of people going through different collections and stuff at stores. You want Chrono Trigger in the box, $15. I mean, it's Japanese copy, so you won't be able to play it, but it's still cool to have like, an in-box copy of something like that.
Totally. I've bought a bunch of stuff there. I had actually stopped putting stuff down because I'm like, this is so cheap that it indicates to me that I can just do this at another time. But but I got like the must-haves. The cool thing I think you'll notice is the clean condition of a lot of things. Like they really take care of everything and put them together. And not everything is well taken care of, but everything has really granular pricing. Like you'll see 10 copies of a game and each one will have a different price basically.
Right.
Depending on, and it's really cool, man. I think it's very different than Funko, for instance, back in the day. I think you're going to have a great time. I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
Japan.
That's right.
It's a long ass flight. Where are you flying from? Pittsburgh?
We're flying from Pittsburgh to Chicago and then from Chicago to Tokyo.
So what is that, like 16 hours from Chicago?
I want to say actually from Chicago, I want to say that's like 12. No, but I'm trying to remember.
That seems really fast.
Maybe I'm thinking of.
It's going to take you just 3 hours to get to the coast of the United States from Chicago.
Yeah. I am trying to remember.
And then another 6 to Hawaii or so, and then another 6. I'm going to say 15.
Yeah, that sounds more accurate. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was.
Close to the longest flight I've ever been on, but not quite.
Dude, that's the thing that I'm the least. Yeah. I just am thinking about being on a flight for that long. And it's not like we don't have the seats that's like, oh, you can lay down in. Like these are pretty normal.
You're flying like full up coach. Because that's the thing I'm never going to do again. I'm not going to fly first class international because that's really expensive. But there's like a bunch of tiers in between coach and first class, and I would just get one of those middle tiers because I can't do it.
Yeah, I'm trying to look now because I brought my flight up, and it's tough because I can't figure it out in my brain. We leave at 1:05 p.m. in Chicago, and we get to Japan at 3:55 the next day.
3:55 p.m.
Yeah,
but that's
I'm just
Japan
looking up.
time.
I'm just looking up. It's 13 hours 15 minutes. It says from Chicago to Tokyo.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, you're gonna do the weird thing when you come back, where you're gonna arrive before you left.
Pretty. Yeah.
Because you're gonna cross the international date line. Like I used to leave when I don't want to say used to because I didn't go very many times, but when I would leave from Japan and go back to San Francisco, we would leave in the afternoon and then come back and arrived that morning. So you'd like do that afternoon again.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
Dude, so I'm looking at we leave Tokyo at 3:50 and the flight home, we go to Washington, D.C. and we arrive at 3:35. So just slightly before.
Right. Time traveling.
Yeah, dude.
Not really, of course. Well, have fun. Good for you.
Thank
It'll be
you.
a great time. Maybe you'll stay.
Dude, if the time zones weren't screwed up where like if I could live and do this job and it not require me to stay up all night, I would stay there a whole month and just work while I'm there. But just not well, and that would be really expensive, but
yeah,
it would be cool.
I'm trying to remember. Ohayo gozaimasu?
Ohio
Good morning.
gozaimasu. Yeah, that's good morning.
I can't remember anything anymore. I wasn't an asshole overtly, but I just was like, I can't speak Japanese. I'm not even going to pretend that I can do this. Konnichiwa, arigato, stuff like that. Like, but I'm not going to be, like Holly, aka Haley's probably going to be pretty deep in trying to speak some of the stuff that she's doing the Duolingo.
She's been doing Duolingo for like 2.5 months now. So she's definitely pretty far along. She's not like fluent by any means, of course, but she'll have much better time than me, who has not really been preparing in that way at all.
Hi. All right. Let's get into the news. Like I said, there's no big news items this week, but there are quite a few smaller news items, and we'll get through all of those now, talk about them at our leisure as we begin Sacred Symbols properly. First thing I wanted to point out was if you go to this website, phoboslab.org, there's a blog there. You can find a blog written in this month of August 2023 by Dominic Sabalewski, who runs the blog and used to work at Psygnosis, I think. But basically, the long and short of it is that you can play the original 1995 launch era PS1 game Wipeout on your browser for free. No problems. Windows, Linux, Mac OS. And I read he writes a really full blog post, most of which is way above my head because a lot of it is about the technical details of putting it on PC, but or kind of reestablishing it on PC. But it seems like this is probably in a shadowy illegal area, but that they expect that they won't be gone after. To understand this, you need to understand a little bit of the history of Psygnosis. And again, I was talking about this on Xbox 2+1, where people talk about Psygnosis like it really mattered, and then it didn't. In fact, I was making them laugh because I was making fun of someone who was like, when Sony bought Psygnosis, they were the biggest publisher in the world. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? They used to make Amiga and Commodore 64 games, but Wipeout was, of course, after they were purchased by Sony, but they were still Psygnosis before they were renamed into Liverpool. They made the Wipeout game. And by the way, Sony was so crazy exclusive about Psygnosis that Wipeout came to Saturn and PC as well. And I actually, when I first got my Sony Vaio in 1996 running Windows 95, it came with Wipeout, which was interesting. And I didn't make those connections at the time at all. But I went and played it for a little while. It's good. It really is good. It runs mega fast. And I've never been good at Wipeout. Wipeout has always been incredibly intimidating to me.
It's
very similar to F-Zero, actually, which I think was clearly inspired by Wipeout. Neither here nor there, but or maybe not. I mean, was F-Zero first? No, I don't think so. I have to look into that. But did you guys play? Did you guys check this out over on Phobos Lab?
Yeah, I tried it out, and you're right. It runs at like a solid 60 FPS. And yeah, I'm always curious about how these projects happen when they're able to get the source code and make some kind of PC version.
What am I talking about? I'm sorry. F-Zero is from 19. Like, what am I talking about? F-Zero wasn't inspired by it. It's probably the other way around. Go on.
Yeah. These projects, recently we saw Mario 64 where they didn't have the source code, but they decompiled it, I think, and it took like years to do it so they could have a PC version of it, which is pretty neat. So to see this pop up is pretty cool. And the fact you can just play in your browser is awesome. Yeah. Dude, did you guys, either one of you, check out the Wipeout PSVR mode for it? Not PSVR 2, the last PSVR. It was really cool. It was really, really intense. So I could only play like 1 or 2 rounds at a time since it's just like super fast.
That sounds so disorienting.
Yeah. It was awesome though.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine like Wipeout is just so fast. Like that game is so like balls to the wall speed centric that like I can't even imagine coherently driving in VR in Wipeout. But no, this shit's cool. Wipeout's awesome. Like it's a weird IP because if you know the history of Psygnosis, when they were renamed Liverpool Studio and became truly what we would know today as a first-party studio, that was done under a lot of consternation. Those guys wanted to continue to make games for other platforms. It was just an inherent thing that they wanted to do. In fact, I think that they saw Sony was interested in them because they made an SDK for PS1 that ended up being vital to the beginning of the PS1, like getting games out to it. And so they acquired them for it. And I think in return, there was this expectation that like, we kind of did this for you and now we can make our games and get them broader. Because there was even a Wipeout. There was like, isn't there a Wipeout game on N64? So it's like, it's pretty interesting that it was so different back then that Sony didn't really see it the way it sees it now. Although I think that it began to fairly quickly. Yeah.
And Psygnosis, I think Sony even tried to sell Psygnosis for like right after they bought them, like a couple of years after they bought them, and then just ended up holding on to them. So that studio, but interesting things came out of there, including Wipeout, which was a seminal early game. And like I said, it was just everywhere. I remember it being on Saturn, but I played it mostly on PC. And yeah, just too fast for me. I couldn't imagine playing that in VR. Too fast. Too scary.
Yeah.
Too real. Shit, I was playing fucking Horizon Call of the Mountain when that came out, and I was looking down, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. I couldn't imagine driving at Mach 7 or whatever the hell's going on in a Wipeout game.
Yeah, I love Wipeout. I love the design language of Wipeout a lot. I like how like all the power items are just like organized like different types of like pixels. They're not even like really like these arted up kind of assets. It's really like I would like I've been saying this for a while, but like they got to get Wipeout Pure on PS5. They got it like because that's a really, really underrated. I think the best soundtrack too of all of them. It's so good.
Yeah, they did. I'm trying to think here. Wipeout 2048, I want to say, was the last one, and that was a Vita game and a PS3 game. And then I think the thing you're talking about, Dustin, was the Omega Collection, right? Which came to PS4, and that was. Correct. Yeah, so that was in 2017, I want to say. So it's been a while. Sony owns the IP. Remember that there was going to be a Wipeout management sim on mobile that never went anywhere. That I don't know if it even ever came out, but if it did, no one cared. It came out like a poop, like a fart. All right. New PS5 model, perhaps? Icon Adel wrote into us and said, hello, gents. Did you see the PS5 Slim leak? Do you think it's genuine? And if it is, what do you think? Not that I was going to buy another one, but I was hoping for a different form factor. So what I would consider to be fairly conclusive video proof from a mysterious tech leaker called BWE shows what I think is the PS4 case. It's empty, but I think it's real. It shows a console that is definitely smaller than the PS5, but kind of based on it, smaller footprint. All the rest. I don't know. Do you guys think, Dustin, let's go to you first. Do you think this is the real deal? Obviously without his innards. And do you think, what do you think about the look of it? Some people were disappointed. I'm not really entirely sure what you expected. They don't need to reinvent the wheel here. They're just trying to make it smaller, I think. Yeah.
Right. So if it is, let's say this was fake, it's certainly a very good fake. It looks very, very real. It has all of the text on the bottom where it's like the recycling down. You're not supposed to throw it away.
Different licenses and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it has that on there. And I think that this somewhat connects in that maybe it's connected, maybe it's totally a coincidence, but we also got that leak of the Q Lite, which was also a incomplete version that, you know, was kind of the shell of the controller with the screen running Android. And so this, you can definitely tell, is also just a shell, but it does give us the first preview of the potential removable disk drive and how that would kind of slot in and out of the console. You can kind of see it. I feel like the current PS5, the disk drive version, already bothers me a little bit how it's asymmetrical and it's kind of chonky on the one side. This PlayStation 5 looks like it's practically pregnant with a disk drive, and I don't like that. Yeah, I don't know if I like that too much, but maybe people were hoping for a redesign that sort of like PS4, where the PS4 Slim was, I wouldn't say radically different, but a pretty obvious shift in design. Whereas this one, it still keeps that, you know, it's got the popped collar on the top and stuff like that. And it's not that much smaller. It seems like it'll be a little smaller, but nothing crazy.
I think it looks fairly substantially smaller in my opinion, but I guess it's based on the person's.
I don't know, man. Yeah, it looks
hand.
it looks huge to me. Like it still looks like this. It looks like the same height, but there's
The
there's
PS5
no real.
the PS5. It might be the same height, but I think it's way. I don't know. Maybe it might be that we don't know because we don't know the scale of the person's hand.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
Like if this is like if this is like a 5'4" dude, then that's pretty crazy. You know what I mean? But if that's like Shaq, you know that
It's like a Tic Tac box.
We need a what is it? A banana for scale.
Right.
Right.
It's like the when the autistic people on the internet, like me, although I'm not nearly autistic enough to do this, but when there's like something in a picture and it's like, there's an iPhone 5, and then they measure it and do the math and they can tell. We just don't have any information to really know. But I don't know. I think you might be underestimating how big the PS5 is. It's really big.
It is really big. I mean, I had to move it around like yesterday because I got a new sound system. And so I was trying to figure out how to get it, because it was before, it was like behind my TV, like kind of hidden because it's so loud and obnoxious that I kind of want it out of the way. But like I can't do that now with the speakers where they are. So it's like, all right.
Are you going to put all the speakers only behind the TV so that all the sound comes directly from the screen itself?
No, I mean I have two. That'd be so fucking insane. But no, I don't know how I'm gonna set it up yet. I still have to get a receiver, which apparently are fucking stupid expensive. So
yeah, this is trying
to figure that out.
The sound, it's just too much.
Yeah.
It's too much. All right, we'll see if this becomes real or not. You can go check it out on the Twitter account BWE_DEV, or is it X now? I don't know what to call it anymore. Yeah. But we should probably be seeing this, which is basically the new PS5 iteration that will subsume the old PS5, which is why they are on sale. In addition, I think that, and they said in their financials, they want to sell PS5s a little more briskly than they are, so they're cutting $50. But I think that they're not really able to acknowledge the new model yet, or people just, why would you buy one? I remember I got my own PS3 in 2009. I worked at IGN, obviously, so I had access to, I just took anything I wanted home, and that was easy enough. But I refused to buy a PS3 until the Slim model came out, because I was like, well, I know this thing's coming. We were talking about it forever. That thing was rumored. And it just put me in kind of a stasis move. So I don't think they want to really acknowledge this thing yet until they get rid of their old stock. You know?
Yeah. Well, I would imagine it would be at least till after that Spider-Man PS5 comes out.
Sure. I don't know. I think they have, we'll talk about this a little bit later in the inquiries, but they have to say something soon about a lot of things. It almost seems obvious that there's going to be a showcase, regardless of the rumors, right? And regardless of what I've been told. Like, it just seems obvious that they have to say something at some point about all these different devices. Are they going to do it in some sort of shitty state of play? I hope not. All right. Thought this was interesting. Assassin's Creed Mirage is gold. And it is being pushed up. It's actually coming out now October 5th, which I think is a couple weeks forward, if I'm recalling correctly. It seems like people want to get out of the way of, if I'm being honest, Spider-Man, and we're going to talk about that a little later, and I don't really blame them. AC Mirage comes from Ubisoft Bordeaux, the French team in Ubisoft's home country, and it's the first new Assassin's Creed game since 2020's Valhalla. It is purported to be a more old school styled Assassin's Creed game with a shorter runtime campaign and a, I guess, less expansive map. This is a huge turn on to a lot of people. I'm really happy for that because the other games, the last two, I think, Assassin's Creed games are both outrageous. Chris, are you going to get into Assassin's Creed Mirage?
I mean, I am curious about it. This has my attention more than more recent previous Assassin's Creed games have, specifically because of its kind of scaled down nature. And I look through my library of games, and I see Assassin's Creed 2 there. I see Brotherhood there, and I'm like, man, I really did like those games like a lot. Like I really enjoyed those experiences, and I'm like, I'm. It's been a long enough time that I'm kind of hungry for something like that again. But also, a lot of it hinges on how well made it is and how well it does. You know, like if I hear through the grapevine that it's whatever, then I probably won't pick it up. But my interest is piqued by this being a more digestible kind of shorter run Assassin's Creed, more classically inspired, because I think that's a gameplay style that is, you know, it might be a little bit derivative, it might be a little bit old, but like, I don't know, I remember really enjoying it, and I would very much like to enjoy that again with, like, you know, modern bells and whistles. So it has my attention.
I like the setting. The Middle East setting's cool. Arab main characters, cool.
Mm-hmm.
A lot to like about it.
Yeah.
I'm just so far out of the loop that I couldn't care less about Assassin's Creed at this point. Dustin, where are you on this?
Yeah, I tried giving Assassin's Creed so many chances over the last few years, even checking out the Viking one recently, Valhalla. I just can't get into them. They're not games for me, but I think it's good at least that they're changing it up. I respect that, and I think that I've seen a lot of the fans of the series be happy about that. And just the other thing that's very interesting, and I don't want to step on another news item, but we're seeing a lot of games get shifted around by just, you know, a week here, a week there. We saw that happen with Baldur's Gate recently. And so it's, you know, companies are trying to be very strategic and not trying to step on each other's toes. And so moving ahead a week is probably a very good decision for them, just because in my case, when I'm playing a game, if I'm playing a game I'm really enjoying, then I'm less likely to buy a game that I'm kind of interested the following week because I'm busy. But so many people are going to see this and say, "Oh, I've got a few weeks before Spider-Man. I'm just going to go for it. I can clear that out. No problem." So moving ahead seems to be probably in their best interest for sure.
Rob Kavazna has a related inquiry. He says, "Dear Sacred Men, in a world of digital games and day one patches, what does it mean to go gold? I honestly do not know anymore. Perhaps I never did. All my love." Going gold simply means that your game is basically submitted for certification and can be printed on the disc as a 1.0 version. I mean, that's kind of the simplest way to put it. Going gold doesn't really mean a lot. What was the game that went gold and then undid it? Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
God.
What was that? We were making fun of it so much because like undid its going gold. But that typically is an indication that the core 1.0 retail version fit for publishing, fit as being the base version of the game, which used to be the version of the game, but to your point is now the base version of the game. I think going gold will be less important as physical games begin to go away, because there will be no reason to go gold so early. Even with preloads, you don't need, because people are saying Starfield is gold, for instance. And what were you going to say?
It was Cyberpunk.
Okay.
They went gold, and then I was trying to figure it out. Yeah, ironically.
So, yeah, that was interesting. But Starfield is available for preload, and I went and read some of what Bethesda Game Studios said, and people were reporting it as going gold, but I'm like, they didn't say that, you know, at least in what I read. They said that the game's available for preload, which doesn't mean anything, because the game can just preload the game and then it can preload huge patches to it as well, right? I don't know that necessarily indicates that it was the same format or same version being printed on the disc, although it's probably 6 of one, half dozen of the other, and they do really mean the same. I just thought that was interesting, because usually you want to use that terminology specifically because it gets people excited. It's like, it's an indication that the game is done and ready to go. When your game goes gold so early, like Final Fantasy 16 did, or like Assassin's Creed Mirage did, I think that that's also a really positive sign as well. But to the point, it's funny how everyone, and we're going to talk about another game in a little while, but everyone is kind of avoiding Spider-Man, which I think is a wise move, because Spider-Man is going to, I'm really excited. I'm very interested to see how well that game does from a critical perception, but I don't think it even matters. I think that just the commercial reception of it will be very interesting. Is Spider-Man still a huge draw like it was? Arguably their best-selling game ever was 2018 Spider-Man. Okay. New South Park game announced. Turd Ferguson, he ain't happy. He says, hey, CDC. South Park Snow Day was announced last week, and I got to say I'm pretty disappointed that it's a 4-player co-op game and not an RPG. Stick of Truth and The Fractured But Whole were amazing and gave me some of the biggest laughs ever. So how do you guys feel about the game? Are you excited for it, or would you have preferred that they made another RPG instead? I was bummed about this when I saw this too, actually, because when I saw, I was like, South Park Snow Day, I'm like, sick. And I was wondering, like, who's developing it? Because the important thing to remember about the previous 2 South Park RPGs that everyone really loved was that they were made by different teams. Obsidian made 2014 Stick of Truth, which I thought was awesome. I loved that game. And I remember that game being very notable because it came to PS3 after the PS4 came out. So it was one of those very rare, there's no cross, you can't go backwards compatible on PS4. So you had to like go play it on PS3, and it felt very quaint at that time. But I loved that game. I thought it was awesome. And then The Fractured But Whole came out in 2017 in the fall, I think, that year. And that was Ubisoft. And what people might recall is that everything got fucked up with the South Park role-playing games when THQ went out of business, the original THQ. What's ironic about this is now the new version of THQ, which is really just not the same, because THQ's assets were split between a bunch of different companies that wanted to buy them. That was so fascinating. That was one of the most interesting things that had ever happened in the industry. Remember when everyone was bidding on all the games?
Yeah.
And like, I want Darksiders and we want this and we want, I was like, that's so interesting. So I guess what I'm saying here is that you already kind of were lucky to get the second role-playing game out of this deal, in my opinion, like the same kind of style of game. And I guess it was kind of unrealistic for us to expect that was going to continue, especially because I'm not sure that Fractured But Whole did extraordinarily well commercially. It was awesome. Again, those 2 games are great, and they are laugh out loud funny on a regular basis. And South Park, I like South Park. I don't really watch it anymore. I haven't watched it in many years. But so the problem here is that THQ Nordic has the publishing rights. A small studio called Question is doing the game. And I just think maybe we have to accept that not every South Park game is now going to be one of these role-playing games. Remember, when South Park games began in earnest, when the series came out in the late 90s, the first interesting thing about them, as you guys might remember, although you were young, was that the games came to N64 first, which was very, very weird, because N64 was desperately trying to get adult content or adult-oriented content on its console later on, and it did. With some different platforms.
Wasn't there like a South Park first-person shooter? Like that was like that was like, I think it was a Snow Day related thing too, because I feel like you threw like snowballs and stuff.
Yeah, I don't remember. I remember that. Yeah, that might be the first South Park game on N64.
That might be
where
N64,
there's like a mode for that or something. Or, I don't remember. But anyway.
Yeah, no, Chris is right. South Park, it's just called South Park, is a first-person shooter game based on American animated sitcom. Yeah, it's just
and that's
called
the
South
first
Park.
game.
That's on N64?
It's on N64,
yeah,
Windows, and PlayStation.
Yeah, that's one and the same. The games you're talking about. Yeah, I remember South Park, because South Park, the original South Park, which we knew as, it wasn't called this, but South Park 64 is what we used to, like the nomenclature for it, came to PS1 the next year. And I think the same thing happened with the sequel, where the sequel came to N64 first, and then it went to PS1 after that. And then there were a few other games, but those were like the 2 notable ones when South Park was and you guys were really too young to remember this, but you were around, but South Park for like high schoolers and college kids and middle schoolers and edgelords of the time, I mean, that was everything. Oh my God, I loved South Park. My parents, that was one of the few shows along with Beavis and Butthead where my parents showed, I was like, you really shouldn't be watching this. And I'm like, well,
yeah,
I'm going to, but I appreciate that you guys are curious about it anyway. All right. So South Park Snow Day coming 2024. Exciting, PlayStation 5 only. Less exciting, it's coming to the Switch, which means that doesn't really matter probably. We'll see what happens though. Okay. New TMNT game? Tanner Brandt wrote in. Said, hey guys, with the announcement of TMNT The Last Ronin last week, I got pretty excited to see the Turtle story being adapted to games. Unfortunately, my hype dissipated once I saw the developer as Black Forest Games, who I only know from doing the Destroy All Humans 1 and 2 remakes. While those are all right remakes, they were both pretty buggy and janky when released. What's with publishers giving some of the biggest IP to unproven studios? I think of recent Silent Hills games and the KOTOR remake that was given to Aspyr as well. Thanks, boys. Yeah, I was a little... first of all, I think Black Forest Games is pretty good. They're probably one of the better publishers in the THQ Nordic family. So there's that. Well, Chris, how do you feel about this? How did you feel about the Destroy All Humans Black Forest kind of ports? And then did they do a ground up reboot too? Or did they just do the ports?
No, it was just so far it's just been Destroy All Humans 1 and 2.
Okay.
And they did like a small multiplayer kind of standalone thing that I think went hand in hand with the second one.
Okay.
It was called Clone Carnage or something. I didn't really fuck around with that too much, but I don't know, man. I liked it. Was definitely a AA effort. Like it was definitely it wasn't this AAA like polish and this perfect game, but I don't know, man. I my experience with Jank and Destroy All Humans is, if anybody's ever played Destroy All Humans Path of the Furon, which was like, that was the 360 PS3 version. That was a 360 PS3 like official like third game for like next gen consoles by I think Sandblast Games, which by the way does not exist anymore. Probably the most janky fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Like the least functional game I've ever played for sure. So to me, playing Destroy Humans 1 and 2, even with those like minor bugs and like some in my opinion, just kind of questionable UI decisions, especially for the first game, I think they did a really great job, actually. Like I completed Destroy All Humans 2. I really enjoyed it. I do think it's held back a little bit by the fact that it's built off of the exact bones of the PS2 game. I don't think it really is this kind of... I don't think it's a new version so much as it is kind of like... I do think a lot of it is based on that PS2 code, and although I could be talking out of my ass, I think they could probably do a decent job with this. I don't know. The TMNT is not exactly this like lauded, like, you know, I was never a TMNT person, so maybe I just missed the boat on this, but it's not this particularly high esteem thing. It's like a popular thing for sure, but it's like Ghostbusters or something, where it's like, it's big, it's popular, people like it, but I mean, that Ghostbusters PS3 game wasn't Uncharted.
No.
You know what I mean? It was great. It was good. It was a good game, but like, I mean, it's not. I think manage your expectations for like something like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and that new movie, by the way, is really good.
Yeah, the April O'Neil stuff's driving everyone crazy because April O'Neil is black in it.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, I don't know.
It's a fun movie though. It's good.
I don't know if that's like why are we so worried about these things?
I don't know, man.
I understand the argument of saying like, why can't you just do it the way it was or make something new? But at the same time, it's like, I don't know that it's the biggest deal that April.
I think it's funny.
April O'Neil's what wasn't a white supremacist. It wasn't like that was really vital to her character.
I do think it's funny that it happens specifically to redheads a lot. I do think that's really fucking funny. I think it's hysterical actually, but I don't know.
Yeah. So I will say this because you guys were born in 93, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of missed TMNT. I mean, you didn't miss it in its reformed versions, but you missed the beginning, like what TMNT was. And I know that it was a visual novel in New Hampshire and all that kind of shit. I know that, but what we knew about it from the late 80s and into the mid 90s cartoon, which was a complete run of cartoons with all the toys that were all interconnected. TMNT was huge and like way bigger, I would say, than something like Ghostbusters. Although I appreciate your point. I'm
talking about in the context of now,
right? Yeah. I understand. And also TMNT's totally, Nickelodeon owns TMNT now. It's totally, which is weird to me because Nickelodeon had nothing to do with My Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like, I think that's so interesting that they've sold out to them. And I think there's some regret about that too from those guys, the two guys that made it or whatever. But I think I'm personally surprised, and I wonder what you think about this, Dustin, that it doesn't court better developers, I guess, because you had Mutants in Manhattan in 2016, which was platinum, and I think Activision published that, and I didn't play it. I don't think people were crazy about that. That was during that weird licensed games from Platinum era where there was just a few weird things in there.
Oh yeah, didn't they do like a Gundam or not like a Transformers?
Yeah,
thing
they did a Transformers game too,
Yeah.
as well, and something else as well. I don't remember what it was, but and so
Korra.
Oh,
The
yeah,
Legend of
that's
Korra
what it
game
was,
that
right.
sucked. Yeah.
and
Right.
I really was thinking that maybe, again, it's kind of apples and oranges, but when Tribute Games did Shredder's Revenge last year, which is awesome, I thought that they got it, that you got to find the right partners, like truly the right partners for your game. And that was a perfect partner for a game like that to kind of revive the Konami style beat 'em ups that were so seminal with the early TMNT run. Very similar to what happened later in the year with Konami or Cowabunga Collection from Digital Eclipse and Konami, where you're celebrating those old games. I guess what I'm saying, Dustin, is I'm surprised that they're not courted by bigger developers. We want to do a Turtles game. We are, I don't know, something like, I'm not saying IO would be the right company, but a company like that, Remedy, IO, a company that's big and independent, those aren't good choices, but I'm thinking of something like that. You'd think that
Right.
TMNT would court the highest of the high. I mean, fucking Rocksteady's been making a goddamn DC Comics game for years and years and years. Spider-Man and all of these things are huge in games because Insomniac made them. This old Spider-Man games, no one gave a shit about those games, right?
Well, let's relax.
Well, someone gave a shit about them because they made like 7 of them, but
yeah.
But
I know what you mean.
they're of a different echelon. I guess, Dustin,
Yeah.
I'm just curious, why aren't they? You got to pay to get a great game, and I don't think this is going to be a bad game. I don't think I don't have the intent. I don't have the insight into Black Forest to know if they're capable of it or not. I guess I'm just confused why you would pick these kind of more limited partners. A TMNT, like a $200 million TMNT game, would seem like an interesting investment to me, in my opinion.
I may be speaking out of ignorance. I'm just telling you what I feel from the gut. But TMNT is big, but I think I'm kind of with Chris where I'm not sure that it has that kind of IP power behind it to... obviously, we can get a lot of great games. Shredder's Revenge was totally sweet, but it's not as expensive as a big developer going in and making a game. And I think that too, there is an argument, I think, that this game is risky in that it is not traditional TMNT, in that this is only about one of them in like a post-apocalyptic setting, to my understanding. Let me make a note because I think that might be a spoiler.
Oh,
because you don't. Yeah, let me put a note.
Yeah, just say when you beep it out, keep all this in, but just it's right, and then just beep it.
Well, yeah, they don't say it in any of the marketing, and even you find out as like a story beat in the book, the graphic novel. So people are gonna check that out. I'll bleep that out.
Casey Jones is the Last Ronin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
it's just gonna be just mod one of the turtles into Ghost of Tsushima, and then you'll
yeah, exactly.
You'll have your Last Ronin.
So I think it could be from the perspective that it is a little risky, this particular IP, but I gotta say that I'm a little more open, or I want to be open-minded to a team like this doing this and also doing a great job, just because we saw, Hogwarts Legacy was a team that I thought, they made some smaller, Disney stuff that was good, but it wasn't anything crazy, anything to say compared to a God of War level AAA game, and which is what they're comparing this TMNT game to. And so I was, not very open-minded about that. And then Hogwarts Legacy, I think, is one of the best games I've played this year. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, just because I've been wrong about this in the past. And those remakes, it sounded like a lot of people really liked them. They maybe had a few issues, but there wasn't anything like any kind of controversy about them being bad or anything, to my knowledge.
TMNT The Last Ronin comes out. Oh, I've closed the window. I don't know when it comes out.
Yeah.
A very long time. I think they said it's years away.
It's early.
Yeah.
It's still early.
Oh, yeah.
I will say, I think Dustin and I are from like a very specific point in time where like 1993, like I don't know what it is, but like I have family who are a lot younger than me who are really into TMNT, or like who actually like have some connection to TMNT. I have family who is a lot older who have connection to TMNT, and for whatever reason, people in my like 92 to 94, 95, like they don't really care. I don't know if that's like that was just a particular drought of content. I know it resurfaced later in like 2007 with that big movie, and then that probably got people interested in it again. I know those live action movies were a little bit before my time as well. And so maybe I think by the time I was like old enough to care, they were so old or so out of the limelight that we just didn't give a shit.
I think you're right. I think you're right, Chris, because 93 was when the first of the trilogy, the original trilogy of live action movies came out that year. So we were too young for that. And then the next time TMNT there was a movie, and not that it's just movies, but that's kind of your big mainstream moment coming back, was 2007. And at that point I was like, it was that weird animated one that was just called TMNT.
Yeah.
And I was not interested. When I was in 7th or 8th grade, I was like, I'm good.
I didn't give a shit about it. I heard it was funny too. Like I heard later on that it was like really good, but I still just didn't. I don't know. And the only thing that really got me to see this more recent one was because the animation style was so distinct. And I was like, that looks like there could be like a Spider-Verse style thing going on with this. And it was, by the way. I actually recommend seeing that movie. It's good.
My little nephews they're all, around 10-ish between all of them. And they love TMNT. They think it's
Isn't that
great.
interesting?
Yeah. We were born at a weird time for the Turtles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just making sure I was getting the dates right. Is that the only Turtles I care about that I'm familiar with at all are the 1987 and 1996 run of the cartoons and the Playmates toys that came along with that line. And I think that IP still exists under some sort of Playmates like spin-off or whatever. I don't really know. But that's the Turtles I'm into, plus the 1989 or 1990 live action movie, which is fucking amazing in my opinion. I love that movie. And the 1991 or 1992 sequel was also pretty good. But the third one I wasn't really into, but I did see that as well. So those are the Turtles I'm into. If it wasn't for G.I. Joe, Turtles would have totally taken over my life. As a young kid who was 3 or 4 or 5 when this was like really getting big, and then like 6, 7, 8, 9, like, and it kept going on, I had to make a choice with my resources. And I just was like, I had quite a few Turtles things, but I would only buy like a few per wave. Had the Turtles, had April, had Casey Jones, had Splinter, and a few other things, Krang and whatever. Rocksteady and Bebop, of course. I love Rocksteady and Bebop. I don't know if you guys know those characters.
Yeah, but Bebop and Rocksteady. They're in that new movie.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I love them I don't know what they do with them now, but I love them in the cartoons, like, and their designs, how they're punk rock, basically.
It's still very much.
Yeah. It's good shit. It's really good. Like, my personal take as an older person, and maybe the people in the audience will have something to say about this one way or the other, but I think TMNT is so good in its subject matter and like in its core, whatever it is, that if you just got the right developer to really invest and make a game, it could become a phenomenon. I'm not saying like a Hogwarts Legacy phenomenon or anything like that. I'm saying that it could really revive.
Right. Yeah.
Like, you just need something great, because the subject matter is great. It really is. The characters. I love that you can look at these 4 characters, the Turtles, with their different. They have actually different shades, but they're largely indistinguishable from each other, other than their headbands. And in the graphic novels, they didn't even have different color headbands.
That's right.
But I love that. But they all look like Raph, as I remember.
Yeah, they had red. Right. It was all red.
And which I think is super cool too. But that just looking at them like that, you can just know their personalities. You know how I can hear them, and it's just so funny. And I love all of them for different reasons. I was a really big Turtles fan when I was a kid. It only went away in my mind because I don't feel like they did very much with it. And I remember that live action one, especially, being like, holy shit, what is this? Like, it was scary looking. I'm like, this shouldn't be. And I'm talking about the newer ones, not the old one.
Oh, yeah, the Michael Bay you're talking about.
Right, the Michael Bay one. Right, exactly. Where I'm like, this doesn't look right at all. The original one looks so right and so good. I love that movie. I really, really love that movie. I think that movie's so special. Raphael in that movie and Casey Jones and their fight in the park is like one of my favorite scenes in that movie. I love that film.
I'm genuinely curious to hear from maybe other listeners who are like around Dustin and my age. Like I'm really curious, because I do think there is something to that.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it's funny because the biggest connection I had to TMNT was playing Hyperstone Heist on the Genesis. We played that game all the time. But that was kind of the extent of it, is we're like, oh yeah, we have this cool Turtles game. that we love. But
yeah, and that was pretty late too.
Yeah.
In that run. I totally get it. It's just a generational thing, I think. I wasn't much of a kids try to be different characters when they're. I was never someone that like tried to dress up or anything like that, except for I did. There were a couple exceptions, and Casey Jones was one of them, because we actually had like an old golf bag in my garage, and that's what he wears like around him, and then he puts all his weapons in the back. Right, and then you could just like you have like some bootleg Casey Jones shit because you have like your wiffle ball bats and hockey sticks or whatever in your bag.
I don't know, man. I think around the time that TMNT would have hit for me, it was competing with like Dragon Ball Z and Spider-Man, and there was just like, there's no way. Like the Turtles had no chance.
No, I can totally understand
that time.
that. I totally understand that. It's like how you guys totally miss Saved by the Bell. Like that's so interesting. That's so interesting to me because that was, it was like ubiquitous. Like but we had so few. I think it's just we had so few choices as well. It was what it was. Like I was too old for Power Rangers by the time it came out in the West. I was in like 4th grade, I think, when it came out. And so I was kind of like not really into it, but it was like, this is what I'm going to watch because it's on at 7 a.m. on the fucking cartoon channel that I watched. So here I am. And the same thing with Saved by the Bell and all these other things. They were just ubiquitous because that was what was on. And TMNT was just one of those things. I remember getting up before elementary school and watching TMNT in the morning. It was like TMNT, G.I. Joe, Transformers. Like there was just, it was good. It was really good. All right. But I'm an old piece of shit, aren't I, at this point? All right. Thought this was interesting. IGN translated this interview that I guess Naoki Yoshida, the executive producer of Final Fantasy XIV and Final Fantasy XVI, gave to a Taiwanese YouTube channel named Mayu4 Superplayer. And what he basically said, he said something he said a lot, but he said something very brief that is getting under some people's skin. And I wonder what you guys think of this. He says, quote, game platforms. I probably shouldn't say this, but I wish there was only one. It would be better for both the developers and the players, end quote. Dustin, what do you make of this? This seems like it fed the fanboy fuel, or it is fanboy fuel, but I don't know that he was saying it like that. I think what he was saying was that it just sucks that they have to make all these different SKUs or worry about these different things. Why can't we just have the universal video game player?
Yeah. So I saw another tweet. I tried to find it. I can't. And so take this with a grain of salt. But I heard that some of the translation is like he thought it would be easier if there was one console, is kind of a way to take what he was saying. And you're right. He's taking it from a developer perspective. I guess he brings players into it too. But designing a game for one console, of course, is going to be easier than dealing with multiple SKUs and different configurations and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, absolutely. And I think there could be that argument that, if we had one platform, literally one, not just one console, but PC everything, then that would be way easier for developers. We would probably have more optimized games, but we don't want that kind of market where there's only one platform holder that holds all the keys. We need competition and stuff like that. So the fanboys stand down on this one. Just the video, he's like, they're drinking. They're having like a casual conversation. It's nothing to feed the war, Yeah.
I agree. I will say though this, Chris, that I thought it was interesting, to the conspiracy theorist's credit. He says in his quote, I probably shouldn't say this. Why would he say that?
I do think he's aware of how the audience reacts to things. I do think there is like a level of like self-awareness where it's like, I probably shouldn't say this because I know people are going to lose their shit online, because people always lose their shit online for everything. Right. But this is how I'm feeling right now. I think you're right that, it's a casual conversation. It's not like a political statement where like he's considering in this moment, like, oh, one corporation owns your entire, library, owns your entire platform, has direct say over what you do and who has access or whatever. Like, I don't think he's talking about that stuff. He's just talking about like you said, the ease of development and the fact that like, oh, well, nobody would be left out if there was one platform. And like, it makes perfect sense from a developer standpoint to feel that way, especially in a casual conversation. It reminds me of, I don't know, the reaction to this kind of reminds me of like, every time I see an article about like some celebrity with like a take or something, and like I don't know, movie digest or whatever, there's some fictional media Twitter account will be like, I don't know, Kate Hudson says, this movie was shit, and everybody's like, what does anybody care what Kate Hudson thinks or whatever? And it's always in the context of like, she was asked directly like what she thinks about that movie, and then she says it, and then people act as if she just came out of people act as if like the celebrity like runs up on a rooftop and just shouts an opinion into the sky as if like everybody needs to hear it.
A press release.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Where it's like people blame the person for responding to a genuine question. And I see that a lot where it's like, it's not like this person's just randomly like out saying this in the street to random people who aren't curious. And I feel like people just need to be aware of how conversations work a little bit more.
I think the context is important too, just in the Naoki Yoshida is an executive producer. That's the facilitator and coordinator of your team. And it's probably a goddamn nightmare. And it would probably be a lot easier. And he probably saw how easy it was with Final Fantasy 16 compared to, say, what Final Fantasy 14 is going to turn into for him. And 16 might as well in the future. I just think that from his perspective, I would imagine that streamlining any processes would be ideal. And so I understand where he's coming from. All right. We were talking a couple weeks back, maybe it was a month or so back at this point. Embracer Group, it was a legendary Colin was right moment, because I said from the very beginning, this company is unsustainable. It can't sustain itself. It will not exist in its current form. And my theory is that they were just acquiring IP and we're eventually going to shut down a lot of these studios anyway. It seems like they might have had even bigger plans than that, but we learned that because they lost a $2 billion line of credit from an unknown group, that they weren't able to continue on their current trajectory and are going to need to shut down teams. They've canceled a bunch of games behind the scenes that have not yet been announced. And we were curious who that group was. And some people were saying that it could have been Saudi Arabia. And it turns out, according to Axios's reporting, Axios.com, that they were probably right. It says Scoop, Saudi-funded Savvy Games was the mystery partner in collapsed $2 billion Embracer deal. And Stephen Totilo wrote, the previously unknown partner in a $2 billion video game mega deal that mysteriously and dramatically collapsed last spring was the Saudi government-funded Savvy Games Group, Axios has learned. The fallout of the failed deal sent shares of the Embracer Group, Savvy's would-be partner and one of the most voracious acquirers of video game studios in the last several years, plummeting and forced it into cost-cutting mode. More broadly, the revelation may raise questions about how Saudi Arabia will proceed with its controversial ambitions to invest $38 billion in the gaming industry. So Axios apparently talked to 4 different sources, so this is pretty well sourced and accurate. Savvy, as they said, is a part of the so Savvy Games Group. Let me rewind even before that. Saudi Arabia has what is called a sovereign wealth fund, which is basically the investment funds and kind of shared monies of a government or a people or whatever. And this is pretty common. Countries in Europe do this or whatever. But Saudi Arabia is incredibly aggressive about this in their investment outside of Saudi Arabia, because they are incredibly reliant on oil and they know that that is not going to last forever. So they've been wisely using their enormous amounts of money to try to do other things. And they've been very aggressive in video games over the last few years, as we've talked about, with much consternation, probably culminating for at least Chris and I in the acquisition of SNK, which was a real bummer. And Yorgos wrote into us and said, hello, Sacred Crew. It was recently revealed that the failed cash infusion the Embracer Group missed out on was from Savvy Games. The Saudi investment fund created Savvy Games, that is. My question is, how bad are Embracer's finances that even the Saudis decided to walk away? The Saudi investment fund is putting money in lots of places, from golf to Premier League teams and other video game entities. But what do you think scared them off about Embracer? And what do you foresee happening to Embracer in the short to long-term future? Appreciate your time. Thank you for all you guys do. Your content gets me through my boring job. It's immediately what I thought too, once this was confirmed. Saudi Arabia is playing with monopoly money in some sense. They obviously don't want to make foolish and wanton investments, but they have lots and lots of money on hand to make deals and to make even risky deals. And you would think that a $2 billion line of credit to Embracer would have come with a lot of back-end ownership of some pretty valuable things, like the Lord of the Rings games rights and Tomb Raider and all these other things that I think you would have been able to make your money back on. But they were scared off. And I believe that they were scared off because I think that the financial situation with Embracer is a lot more dire than $2 billion is going to fix, in my opinion. Dustin, what do you think? You have anything you want to say about this?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. I think there's also worth saying that they probably were monitoring their development and seeing how certain games were coming out as well. And you have a game like Saints Row, which is arguably one of their biggest IPs that they've owned and been a part of, and just totally flop. Well, I don't want to say totally flop, but come out with controversy and mixed results. So I can understand that seeing some of that would be like, in addition to the money aspect that you said, it's like maybe this is not something we should do, because remember when we initially heard about this deal falling through, is that it sounded like it was all gonna happen. I'm that's what I'm most curious about. What was the 11th hour decision? What was the straw that broke the camel's back that they walked away? It all came down to this one meeting, and then everything fell apart.
Yeah, it's but the potential that to Embracer's credit, there's potential that they were just simply being asked too much for the money. And maybe they realized, Savvy might have been treating them like they were kind of over a barrel in some way. Like, you need the money or you're going to be fucked. So we want X, and they just didn't want to give it up. Chris, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a lot on the show about just how it just seems like they're just a lot. They're just too. They own too much, and they're too big for what they're capable of actually like delivering on. And it seems to me like. I'll put it this way. I'm not under the impression that what you just said is the reason why that happened. Like, I'm not under the impression that Embracer was actually in a pretty good spot and the Saudis might have been overreaching. I think that might be true on the Saudis' part, but I don't think. I don't know. I think the financial situation over there is really dire. I don't think it takes a genius to see that.
It could be that the Saudis or other entities just want to get involved later when things are even worse too, which is a bad sign for Embracer. I just think it's so blatantly obvious that Embracer Group is unsustainable. I'm just surprised that I'm not like the world's smartest person, and I saw that from a mile away. I'm just surprised that more people didn't see it. How are you going to manage something like that? When you think about the video game industry, how are you going to do something like that? You're just competing with yourself. And that's why, again, with Sony's if people want Sony to expand, I'm like, I don't know that you want them to get too much bigger, because you got to find spaces for all these games. And when you're working with, what were they at, 130 or 140? And they were studios, and they were bragging about how many games they had in development. No.
It's insane.
No. We'll see what happens with them. All right, a few more quick hits here before we get into what we're playing. This happened just recently before we started recording, but Alan Wake 2 has been delayed 10 days from October 17th to October 27th. And developer Remedy is pretty open that they're doing this not because of the game, but because they want to get it more space. And I think that they probably imagine that this will get them a little further away from Spider-Man. They're right, because it's at the 17th, they're 4 days away from Spider-Man. At the 27th, right, they would be 6 days away, but it's after Spider-Man. So I think it does benefit them a little bit. Plus, it gets them a little bit closer to Halloween, which I think benefits the subject matter of Alan Wake 2. I am very skeptical about how this game's going to sell, though, because this to me is a sign that they're not seeing good internals. Like, to make a move like this is pretty late, not unprecedented. We've talked about more that have happened, like Assassin's Creed, getting away from other games, but they're probably a little bit scared about this one. I'm going to play this game, and I'm probably going to begin Alan Wake Remastered this weekend for when we're recording this. Dustin, what do you think about Alan Wake 2's delay to October 27th?
I think it's a good idea on multiple fronts, particularly, of course, Spider-Man. But I don't know how people feel about buying. Like, I always want to play games and watch Halloween scary stuff. And the closer that I get, the more I'm in the mood. And so it makes sense to me that this could be appealing to people, even if they didn't play the first game. Like, oh, there's a big new horror game out, and it's out. It's real close to Halloween. Let's check it out and see what's going on. So this was a game I was going to check out regardless, since I played the first one, a long time ago when it came out. But it seems like a smart decision. But you're right, it is a little late to be shifting around quite like that. But I guess, Assassin's Creed is doing it too, but I guess they're moving up instead of down. So we'll see, though. I hope it does well, just because I like Remedy a lot. I think it's cool they're going back to this IP is really neat. And we'll see how it shakes out. No physical release, though. I'm a little annoyed about that still, but we'll see what happens.
All right. Anything you want to say about this? Are you going to play Alan Wake 2, Chris?
Oh yeah, easily. Yeah,
No.
I love Alan. I just love Remedy in general. Like I really like their games. I enjoyed Alan Wake a lot. I know that people went back to that remaster and kind of felt a little bit like it was a little bit worse than they remember, or like maybe like the controls didn't feel as good. But like I don't know. Like I still really like Alan Wake. I like that universe. I like that, especially I like that actor a lot, and the fact that he's back is really cool. But I think it looks awesome. I think they did it like from a presentational standpoint. I think Alan Wake 2 looks awesome, and I hope it does well. I'm kind of with you though that I'm a little bit skeptical. I do think the original Alan Wake was a bit more of a cult hit than like a massive success. So to go back to it is really cool. But I don't know if Alan Wake is necessarily like this big IP that's going to demand a ton of attention, especially around Spider-Man, regardless of whether or not it comes before or after. It does benefit it for it to be after, just because it gives it a little bit room to breathe. People don't feel like they're going to be interrupted by this massive, huge Marvel IP in the middle of playing this game, depending on how long it is. But I'm really looking forward to it. I'm rooting for it. And yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time for that game to come out as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that thematically it's going to do them well. Yeah, I'll be very interested to see how Alan Wake does. I'm sure it wasn't very expensive to make, which is good for them. And yeah, I agree with you too in the cult status of Alan Wake on Xbox 360. They did do that follow-up American Nightmare or whatever, but you think that they would have invested readily in that IP. Keeping in mind, as I remember, Microsoft owned that IP and let them take it, which I think goes to show you, or maybe sold it back, which goes to show you what they felt about it to begin with. Okay, couple more things here. New Walking Dead game was announced just before we started recording, and it looks pretty bad.
It's crazy.
Gamatsu writes narrative-driven action-adventure game The Walking Dead Destinies, announced for PS5 and PS4 and other platforms as well. It'll cost $49.99. A release date was not announced, although a leak indicates it will come out in November. The thing that I'm bummed out about this is twofold. The idea, first of all, is pretty cool. It says, quote, The Walking Dead Destinies is a third-person narrative-driven action-adventure game where players' choices reshape the events of seasons 1 through 4 of the AMC original series. And so you're like, and I think the trailer shows a pretty seminal point, I think from season 2, where it goes a little bit differently. So it does spoil that if you want to check that out. I think it's on IGN. But Game Mill is the company that's publishing this, and Game Mill sucks. Now, the Flu Games is the developer, and I don't even know who that is. But Game Mill published that Cobra Kai game. They published that G.I. Joe Operation Blackout game, which was horrifying. So they did that Nerf Legends game came out that has I think a Metacritic score of like 2 or something. So kind of bummed. This is another example of why does The Walking Dead and what is it, Robert Kirkman or whatever, and why don't they understand what is necessary to do a Walking Dead game? I actually went and looked because I actually played Walking Dead Survival Instinct. Do you remember that game? It was a 2013 PS3 game. Terminal Reality made it. The game sucked.
I think I played that too. Wait, what was it? What was it called? Survival Instinct?
Yeah, Survival Instinct. It was like I think it was an FPS. And
I do remember this.
Yeah, it was so bad. And obviously The Walking Dead was treated somewhat substantially better by the old Telltale, but it's just so weird to me. Like, why are you doing this? What is the point of this? To an IP that is fairly well respected in some sense, why not make a good game? Just looking at this game, I don't understand the point of it at all. Chris, are you going to play Walking Dead?
No.
I'm sorry, The Walking Dead Destinies.
No way. Like this has like I know this might be a little unfair because like who the hell knows, it's not out yet, but this has like a Gollum stink on it where like I don't know, man. This looks so this is an elderly looking game, man. This looks like even the trailer feels like it's in low res.
Yeah, I'm watching it now actually on
you know what I mean? Where like it doesn't feel
IGN has it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not looking forward to this at all. I don't care about The Walking Dead. First off, like that show's fine. Like I watched the first season, I thought it was competent. I saw the second season, and I was like, why are we in this farm for this long? It's really boring. And the third season, they got out of the farm, and I was immediately like, I don't. I can't with this, and I dropped off immediately. Like I didn't see past season 3 really, so like the IP doesn't matter to me. I like zombie survival games. Like I actually think like when I was playing State of Decay 2, like I recently I was like, this is really cool. Like I like this, but like I like it specifically because I'm making my own story. Like I don't give a shit about these other characters in a game where I'm experiencing the thing that makes it fun, you know. And so to see like, oh, what would it be like if Shane did this? Like I don't know. This is a hardcore Walking Dead fan game, and I don't imagine that audience is that high. And based on how the game looks, I would imagine that the people funding also felt somewhat similarly.
Yeah, the game straight up looks like shit. I don't.
Yeah,
I like by modern standards, it looks at best like a mid-gen PS3 game. I would say.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
pretty bad.
Yeah, the original Last of Us on PS3 looks miles better than this.
Oh my god, that's not even close. Substantially. Destin, Walking Dead. Why do I want to keep calling it Survival Instinct? Destinies.
Yeah. If Daryl dies, we riot. Remember that? Is that still something people say? You get like a shirt.
That just sent me back into such a horrible place.
What was that like? What people were scared he was going to die on the show or something?
Yeah, because they're like, we love Daryl. It's like if he dies, that was on like so many shirts.
Oh wow, I don't remember that. That's so interesting.
And like there were memes on it, and that was like that era of meme too. So it was just Norman Reedus' face with like the color pinwheel background with like impact font on the top and bottom.
Yeah,
just oh man.
I'm seeing it on Google.
I hate that you reminded me of that.
There's it's like a keep calm and carry on thing, but it says if Daryl dies, we riot. So no, I'm not particularly interested in this one, but shout out to all the Walking Dead fans out there, just still holding on for some reason. You're going to be feasting well with this game, it seems. So your endurance will be paid off with this one.
Jeez. All right, 2 more things. This was a surprise. DC Universe Online is coming to PlayStation 5. This was announced on the official website for the game. It's just strange because DC Universe Online came to PlayStation 3 in 2011 and PlayStation 4 in 2013. That was during the Sony Online Entertainment era that then became I think Daybreak, right? And then that became Dimensional Inc. or I don't know what's going on with that game, but nonetheless, if you're interested in playing DCUO 12 years later, it'll be coming to PS5 this holiday season, apparently, according to the blog post.
Dude, when I saw this in the doc, I thought, is this game still around? Like, I didn't know. No disrespect to the DCU players out there, but I just didn't know there was even an audience. I thought this game was long gone at this point.
Me too. Yeah,
I can't believe it's still going. I remember even watching people play it when it came out. I was like, what the fuck is this? Yeah. And it's still just trucking on. Chris, are we gonna see each other in Metropolis?
Metropolis, yeah.
No, I can't. Dude, I don't know, man. This was even when I saw this game in 2011. I just like it just did not pique my interest, and it still doesn't. I can't pretend.
Fair enough. Final piece of news: EA Sports has revealed on PlayStation Blog that NHL 24 will come to PS4 and PS5 on October 6th, so you can look forward to that. Chris, you were playing NHL 94 recently. You were saying this is 30 entries later. Will you play it?
No. Like I liked. There was something about the 2D aspect of that specific NHL 94 that I actually like kind of really appreciated and enjoyed, and it made it a little bit easier to wrap my head around. But the second it gets more complicated than that, I'm just like, look, now it's just real hockey, you know, and I don't know real hockey enough to care about that. I
was watching the trailer because in the NHL, in the hockey world, you know, I'm tuned into that. I love hockey, and on Twitter or whatever, people were circulating a piece of the trailer because there's just a horrible animation in it that somehow snuck through where a dude is getting like hip checked in the middle of the ice, but he doesn't even hit him. He like goes behind him, and then the guy like blows up, and people were like, how did that get through whatever associate producer put this together for you, you know, or designer put this together for you. People are pretty upset about the NHL series, like at a higher level, because they feel like it's not really getting a lot of love from EA. And these 9-month development cycles used to really, you were able to extract a little bit more back in the day out of that 9 months. Like you'd be able to do something big to your game in that time, but you can't do anything now. There's really just no time. So you kind of just release the same game. And I think every few games is like the big update now.
Yeah.
Which is shitty.
Colin, speaking of that, I looked ahead to make sure this wasn't a question. Did you see that Modern Warfare 3 was revealed while we were recording, officially revealed to have a November release date? And we even got an article from our own Gene Park in the Washington Post talking about the campaign. Sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, I thought we talked about it. Didn't we not talk about this last week?
Well, this is, I don't think it was
that
officially
a rumor at the time? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's this stuff now going around about how all of the online maps will be Modern Warfare 2 maps remade. Like that's the entire suite of maps for the game.
Yes.
Which is interesting. Correct. But I understand now why people are saying like this feels like a piece of DLC.
Yeah. So, Colin, let me read you just a one thing from Gene's article, which I recommend everyone go check out. But this is really intriguing. It says, Modern Warfare 3, developed by Sledgehammer Games, will feature what the team dubbed open combat missions, which use open-ended spaces to present different and optional objectives.
Oh, cool.
Players could revisit the same location several times without seeing a particular story beat. If the player wants to be silent, they can use silent weapons. If they want to breach and clear a room, player can choose which tools and weapons to use and where to enter. This is the first time in the multi-billion-dollar franchise, the biggest in the games industry, will offer a sandbox experience.
It's like Battlefield, kind of.
Yeah, sounds
curious.
Pretty interesting.
That's actually interesting to me.
Yeah, so the map thing is kind of, it's funny how it's always joked about Call of Duty recycling, and now they are recycling, and that's like a marketing point. It's like, yeah, we're remaking all the old maps.
Oh yeah, that's nostalgia though.
But wait, so does that mean they're remaking maps from the original Modern Warfare 2? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Modern Warfare
2 on PS3.
So they're remaking Modern Warfare 2 maps for Modern Warfare 3?
Yes.
Correct.
That's apparently the full suite of maps is going to be old Modern Warfare 2 maps.
Honestly, dude, Modern Warfare 2 had some bomb-ass maps. Like that was Favela and that shit, man. Like if they can get that shit in, I'm happy with that. I was actually kind of I was somewhat disappointed that like those maps weren't in the previous Modern Warfares, to be honest with you. So I don't mind that. Remakes are awesome.
I'm sorry,
like map remakes, I don't mind those at all.
Yeah, I'm curious to see more about this, just because it sounds like for the hardcore Call of Duty fans that Sledgehammer is changing a lot of stuff in terms of the movement. Like they're bringing back it says here on this Twitter post, slide canceling, reload cancel, fire immediately after sliding, increase strafe speeds, they're bringing the classic mini map.
Yes.
Gear perk systems. And there's going to be 12 additional 6v6 maps that come out post-launch. And this is the other thing, Colin, about you mentioning about it being DLC. Weapons and cosmetic content, including bundle operators and other stuff, will be unlocked and carried forward between Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3. So the stuff you bought in the last game...
Smart.
So they're kind of making it a platform then.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of platform. Look, man, a lot of that sounds good to me. Like, I don't know why they got rid of the minimap. The minimap was really nice, and it's weird to me that they got rid of it.
I'm trying to remember, because it says the last game had a minimap, but I can't remember the difference. I've played old COD and new COD, but I don't remember the difference between the minimaps.
Yeah. I played Modern Warfare 2 recently, like because of all the server fixes and when that was kind of exploding on back compat on Xbox, and it's just a lot cleaner. It's a lot less cluttered. It just makes a lot more sense. So hopefully, like, I do think Call of Duty needs to like minimalize a little bit. It's getting a little bit too granular with certain things. So that it would be nice to have that functionality.
Yeah, I'm trying to see what the actual release date is.
Man, I never realized how at peace I was forgetting that whole Daryl meme. Like I was so I really was so at peace. And I'm really shaken by having that reintroduced into my brain.
Yeah, November 10th for Modern Warfare 3.
Great.
So
please look forward to it. All right. That's it for the small pieces of news, and that's it for the news really generally, but we'll remind you of that after we talk about what we're playing. I'll go first here just to get out of the way, since you guys are playing the same big game and a lot of people want to hear about it. Murderer Kevin wrote in and said, "Hey CDC, with Colin playing Rogue Legacy 2, what are your thoughts on Hades? Have you guys played it? For me, this is the best roguelite, and I'm gassed for Hades 2. It's so funny you bring this up because I've been spending so much time with Rogue Legacy 2 over the last week, and it's such a reiteration and a reminder of why this specific type of game is for me. I think Hades is a very popular, very lucrative game. It's going to get its sequel, like you said, which is unusual for Supergiant to even do. And I think that that's all great, but I couldn't really get into Hades for the brief time I played it. I'm like, this isn't exactly what I'm looking for. I just have these very unique wants and desires with games, especially like this. And Rogue Legacy is just so good. Rogue Legacy 2 is just so very, very good. And I don't know, there's something very addictive about it. I'm not very good at it, but then I realized that no one's really good at it. I just beat the 4th boss in the game, and only 15% of people have the trophy for it that have played the game. So it's obviously very difficult for a lot of people, or people are bouncing off of it. I will say that the big complaint I have about it, and it's probably a skill level, like a get good level, is just that it requires a lot of you to get money to spend on your upgrades to make your character stronger. Plus, there's kind of the limited nature of your roles for characters where you just get whatever you get, and you can kind of just get rid of them and start again. But it's not really in the spirit of the game with all the different classes to try them out or whatever. So what I end up doing is I play a game where you beat a boss in a section of the fortress or whatever, and then you don't ever have to fight that boss again. So you could just skip right to the second part and right to the third part, but I play all the way through each part to get all the money and kill all the enemies and get all the experience. And it feels like kind of a requirement, while at the same time you could just jump to the place you just died, like the same world you just died, and try it again, but you're just not at the same level. And I don't know, there's some tension between that keeps me coming back. And I think Rogue Legacy 2 is authentically funny. Just like the different things that could be wrong with your character. I love that. Like I had my character had IBS, so he just farts. Like every few seconds you just hear like while you're playing. It's just there's just funny little things like that. For people that don't know, Rogue Legacy 2 is about replaying characters over and over again. That's in a lineage, a legacy of characters where you're playing as ancestors of the character that just died, and each of them have like unique traits, and some of the traits are really good and some of the traits are really bad. So like I've said in the past, you could be colorblind. The whole screen could go black when you get hit. There are things like that. Like you could fight with no map. You can see no hit points. There's just a bunch of different things. And they use real technical terms. I don't know any of them, but there's a technical term for when your skin starts turning blue. And that's like one of the traits. So like your character's just blue. There's a trait where everything is Christmas themed. So like you love Christmas. And so like the enemies are Christmas themed. The treasure chests are like present boxes and everything. It's just very, very fun. If you're into 2D side-scrolling action, kind of pseudo Metroidvania, because it's really not. It's actually randomized in a lot of different ways. You can use seed numbers and do whatever you want with that. Plus just a really extensive series of upgrades. It's just a lot. It's very deep. It's one of those games that's so deep that I imagine a vast, vast majority of people that play it never see all the stuff you can do in it. And I remember that being the case when I played the original on Vita. I beat it, but I never got the platinum because it required so much of you. And this game requires so much more. I'm probably 35 hours with this game so far. And I basically have only been playing that this week, except for something else. I played through all of Halo 2. I don't know if I ever beat Halo 2 back in the day, but I owned Halo 2. It was probably the last Xbox game I ever bought on the original Xbox in 2004. And Dagan and I recorded Knockback about it, so that goes live in the coming days. It might be live for you on Patreon already. We recorded for about 2 hours, and we did Halo Combat Evolved back in the day as well, like last year, so you guys can go listen to that as well. I thought it was really, really great. I think what Halo 2 does really well is that, first of all, the gunplay is just so fun and so solid. The story is really, really good. Where is it? Yeah, I texted this to Chris. When you first saw Halo, were you blinded by its majesty?
Yeah.
I just texted Chris that one night because I love that line.
It's a great line.
I was saying to Dagan, I have a big problem with the game, which I want to talk about in a minute, but I was saying to Dagan that in terms of gunplay, gameplay, and the floatiness of it, kind of the alternate gravity feel and being able to make almost impossible jumps, the vehicular combat, both in the air and on the ground, so fun. Different weapon combinations, dual wielding, although I'm not very good at dual wielding, a cool option. I was telling Dagan I'm a little intimidated by dual wielding. Wolfenstein is really the series that introduced that to me, and I'm just not very good at it. I don't know how to shoot with both fingers. It's just my brain just doesn't work like that. So all those things were really cool, and I love the story. Like I didn't appreciate, especially because when I was younger, I don't think I was paying first of all, I was probably not aware of what a lot of things were even about, and then I wasn't paying very close attention. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize how interesting this was. Like how interesting the story is with this this religion. I don't want to even spoil it, but this religion and kind of a civil war and playing from different perspectives and all of that. And so Dagan and I are going to get right into Halo 3, I think, in the next episode of Knockback, because the beauty of these games is that they just don't require very much time. And this was a lamentation that I shared on the show, is like, where did these games go? Actually, when the game ended, I was like, that's it? I thought there was going to be at least one more chapter. It kind of ends like out of nowhere. And I realized in reading about it that they kind of cut the last third of the game out. So it kind of does end suddenly. But so all right. So my major complaint about the game, and I'll let everyone listen to our greater thoughts, but the Master Chief Collection took great liberties with the aesthetic of Halo 2. And you would not know it if you didn't constantly switch back and forth between the two versions. And the more I realized it, the more I distracted the fuck out of myself by switching back and forth constantly. They took major liberties, 343, with Bungie's vision. And I don't know. So I was saying this, Chris, there's a point in the game, I don't remember what stage it is, but like you're looking out at like this cityscape, this beautiful cityscape, right?
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And the lights are going towards it, right? Like it looks like there's a suburban kind of thing going towards it. And then you switch to the old version and it's the decrepit city with no skyline. And I'm like, what? So what am I supposed to, what is this? Is it either a blown out city or a beautiful futuristic city? They're totally different. And then there was a part like you feel like you're in Cloud City in Empire Strikes Back. There's like orange clouds and like these like floating fortresses or whatever. And the old version of the game is it's like orange and dark and scary. There's almost a heart. And the new one, it's bright. There was a part of the game, Chris, there was a part of the game that was daytime in the new version and nighttime in the old. Where like it was a night sky, and then you would turn it in Master Chief Collection and it would be this beautiful. And I'm like, what? Why did it look like Mass Effect? That was kind of a problem for me. I was kind of bummed. Because
I feel I feel somewhat similarly about it. I do think it's one of those, when you compare it to the Combat Evolved one, I think Combat Evolved Anniversary looks significantly uglier. I think it's a far worse, they did a far worse job. I do think Halo 2 misses a lot of atmosphere.
Definitely.
Specifically in gameplay. I think the cutscenes are fucking incredible.
Oh, yeah. The cuts. Dude, I was switching back and forth in between the cutscenes because they're so comically bad in the old ones comparison.
It's very. but the new cutscenes, I think, are fucking top tier. Like they did a perfect, absolutely perfect job, like updating those and redoing. But like I do think in gameplay, it's better to play the old. I do think it's better if you're curious about experiencing Halo 2 through the Master Chief Collection. My recommendation would be when a cutscene begins, switch to new graphics. And then, when it goes back to gameplay, switch back to the old, because I do think they do things intentionally with atmosphere in the original Halo 2 that I do think the modernization kind of misses out on. There's a great encounter. One of my favorite encounters, the one that I play through like all the time, where you're going over a bridge, and you're approaching like this big city. And it's orange, like the sky is like orange and it's very dire. And then when you switch to, the modern graphics, it's kind of like sunny and cheerful. And it's like, it really fucks with.
It's weird.
The tone of it. It is distracting. I do think it still looks gorgeous. I do think it's like when you switch to the new graphics in gameplay, it is still coherent. It's cohesive. It does look nice. But as somebody who did experience the original game and understands what the atmosphere of those areas are supposed to be, I prefer the old school kind of stuff. But props to them for those cutscenes because it's fucking incredible.
Yeah, they look great. And I think they were.
I want a movie. I want a movie that's just cutscenes like that. I feel like it would be fucking incredible. But
you get your Paramount Plus show instead.
Yeah, got it. Yeah,
but
sadly.
So that's really all I have to say. I mean, I'll leave my spoiler filled details about the game, but generally speaking, I thought it was awesome. I think that if you just played the Master Chief Collection without switching back and forth, you would be none the wiser. But Yeah, I was saying to Micah, it felt, and I said on the show to Dagan too, it felt more like a horror game back in the day. Now it feels more
100%, yeah.
like something
I mean,
else.
there's horrifying themes in that game. Like there's like some crazy shit going on. Like I love that game too because it's like it's two perspectives, and one perspective is like comparatively like very like cheerful and fun. There's like sarcasm and like it's very military hoorah, and then the other side is an existential crisis. I love Halo 2 a lot. Like narratively, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool, man. I'm
excited. I'm excited to listen to your conversation about it.
Yeah, I think you'll like it. I mean, we were both really high on it. I think we were talking about how Master Chief looks like a motocross driver from
totally,
and he's listening to new metal or something, but it's not about him. It's about everything. No. It's about everything going on, and it's really at the core about the gameplay. Like I think the game is just undeniably fun to play. It was fun to just play a shooter or a game that doesn't demand very much of you other than to just play it and then move on and then play it and then move on. And we were talking a great deal about how this game exceeded everyone's expectations when it came out. No one that I remember complained about much of anything about it. And now if you released a 10-hour game like that, people would fucking shit their pants.
It's crazy.
And I think I read that Halo 3 is even shorter than Halo 2, which is interesting. So, and I have no experience with Halo 3. Halo 3 came out the year I was hired at IGN full time, and that game was like all the rage for everyone. Fucking loved Halo 3. And then I also didn't know this, and this is where my ignorance comes from, that Halo, I was like, what is Halo 3 ODST? I'm like, is it like an expansion or something? But I guess it's its own game about.
It was. Yeah, it was supposed to be an expansion for Halo 3, and then Microsoft was like, no. What it was supposed to be an expansion for Halo 3, but I think contractually Bungie was obligated, because they left Microsoft or became independent once Halo 3 came out. And then they were contractually obligated to make 2 other Halo games, and they were going to make an expansion for Halo 3. But I think the scope of it got so big that they were like, hey, this could count as one of these contractually obligated games. And I think the goal was like, we could get this out and maybe get out earlier, as opposed to just like doing this expansion, then doing Halo Reach, and then potentially maybe doing something after that, before becoming independent.
Right.
So ODST is awesome too. It's definitely like an interstitial. It's more about the atmosphere of it. Like the jazz, the jazz soundtrack in it is fucking awesome. I like Halo. I mean, that entire Bungie run of games, I adore.
Yeah, Reach is the last one they did, right? And then 4 and 5 are
4 and 5 are 343. Yeah, Wars. Well, Wars was Ensemble, I think, but under 343, and then 343 started with 4 and 5 and onward.
Right. So we'll get to all of those at some point. But 3 we're going to get into with some immediacy, because I'm curious, because 2 ended so suddenly. It's like, all right, well, let's. And I as I understand, 3 takes place like a few days after 2, so you get right into it, which is interesting to me. So yeah, that's what I've been spending time with. Dustin, you have something to say?
Well, I was going to say, Chris, do you think, is it possible? It sounds like Halo Infinite is going to be Colin's favorite Halo game. It's the Far Cry Halo game. Like you're going to be like, you're going to think that Halo Infinite's amazing.
I don't
most
think
likely. So. You don't think so?
No. I no.
I probably won't get to it any time in the next years anyway to come. That Infinite wouldn't even be eligible for knockback yet either. So
yeah.
Okay.
But I'll tell you this, so I started a new last year when I didn't play Xbox One really at all. I don't know what my Xbox 360 login was for my account. For Xbox 360, it didn't really have anything very valuable on it anyway. I didn't have live or anything. And during the Xbox 360 and Xbox era, it was very locked down when you get early games. This was something that Ryan McCaffrey used to get so mad at us for, because when we would play debug PS3 games, we would get trophies, and he'd have to play on a separate siloed Xbox for early access that would get these special hard drives that you would put into it. And so he had none of the trophies and achievements or whatever. So we all just had a bunch of names that we would just use. Everyone would use depending. So I never had my own account because of that as well. So anyway, not playing Xbox One. And then I made my own account on Xbox Series X for Halo Combat Evolved last year. And I say all that just to say, after 2 games, I have 420 achievement points. Oh, 420 light up. 420 light up. All right, my friends, let's get to you guys. You're playing Baldur's Gate 3. Dustin, I'll let you take it.
Yeah, still playing Baldur's Gate 3. I I thought I was almost done with Act 1, and then I found an entirely new giant area in the game, which is very difficult. All the enemies in there are really, really difficult. So I'm wondering if I don't know how the game works. I don't know if there's a certain door. In fact, there's 2 doors, or not doors, but passage where it says, hey, you don't want to go here. You're not strong enough yet. So I don't know if moving to the next area prohibits me from coming back, but I probably should look that up. But yeah, it's crazy that I've been playing this game. I think I'm over 20 hours in now, and I'm still in Act 1, just kind of doing all these different things and still really enjoying it. I got to say, the positives that I've said are still true from last week, but there has been some more negative things. In particular, I've had 2 quests break on me. One of them I was able to fix by kind of doing this workaround by talking to a certain person or something like that. So that was no big deal. But now I have another quest that it's not like a major story quest, but it was a really big side quest, and now I can't complete it because the option you have to I'm trying to be vague. You need this certain item, and I've picked up the item, and when I go talk to this person, they don't even acknowledge it at all. And I looked online, and apparently other people have experienced this bug since 2020 when the game was in early access, and it's never been fixed. So, and I've heard too that the game, not that it's nowhere, it's not like a cyberpunk situation or something like that, but I heard the game does get increasingly buggy as you go on with different quests. So nothing right now to make me stop. Like I said, it was a side quest. It's not a huge deal that I check it off, but the only way I do have an option to finish the quest, and I just have to kill the person. And then the quest is over because they're just fucking dead at that point. So that is an option that I could consider. I will say there too that while the game is so open-ended in how you do things, there has been a few instances too where there's something that logically, at least to me, makes sense, and I can't do it. It's like, oh, you can't do that. And it's like, damn it. It's kind of immersion breaking when it's like, man, by my logic as the player, this should work. And it just doesn't. Yeah. So that's kind of annoying too. But I really am enjoying, in particular, I guess, what I've really started to enjoy as I get deeper in is just that you have all these characters that you have join your crew that obviously have different combat potential and stuff like that. But they also have really interesting interpersonal relationships as well. And oftentimes you have to decide and make decisions and side with different people that, you know, eventually that has ramifications in the story as well. So a lot to consider. And I'm starting to get a handle more on the combat. It always is frustrating when you're playing a tactical RPG game like this, where you're literally standing beside the person that you're trying to swing your sword at, and you roll a 0 or something, and so you just don't hit them at all. It's like, what the fuck? It's like XCOM when it's like you're standing right beside someone with a 95% chance and then it doesn't hit. But that's just kind of the name of the game with RPGs. But I'm really surprised how much I'm still enjoying this game. At some point, particularly when Armored Core comes out, I'm gonna have to put it down for a bit. But I'm trying really to just savor it and not feel this need to race through it. I think about games like, you know, huge games like Red Dead Redemption 2, where I really only played that and then towards the end really started to rush through it. And I wish I hadn't done that. And with Baldur's Gate 3, it's like, it's okay. I can leave it for a bit, play something else.
Yeah, there's no rush.
And then come back to it.
There ain't nothing.
You know, and just enjoy it like a long novel or something like that. So
sure. But
Chris, did I see on Twitter you're potentially out at this point on Baldur's Gate?
Yeah, I mean, I experimented a little bit more with it. I don't know. I enjoy it, but I have a lot of those moments like you just described, Dustin, where like you think something will work and then it doesn't. And then but that's kind of like the point of a game like this. That's kind of like the point of having a game that is so open. And I kept thinking back to a game like Prey, which is very, very scaled down and very, very small in comparison. But everything I do in Prey that I think would work works. And it rewards you for that because and obviously because it's a very different game. It's, it's more of an immersive sim, and I get that. But, the game was sold to me in the aspect of, oh, you can do anything because it's D&D. And when I see obvious solutions that don't work, it bothers me so deeply. And it's just kind of frustrating me. And knowing myself and the kind of games that I enjoy, also knowing how much work I have to get done, knowing that Starfield is around the corner, and that's probably more my cup of tea than this would be. I don't know. I'm gonna see how I feel about it. I'm gonna keep going with it. Because I do think there is a lot of stuff there that I like. I like the characters a lot. I like the performances a lot. I like a lot of the underlying gameplay mechanics. I like interacting with players or not players, characters, and making decisions and having those things kind of either work or fail spectacularly. It's fun. It's really cool. It is rewarding, but the moment to moment gameplay, especially the combat, I'm just not having fun with. And that's kind of a big problem for me. So I'm slowing down a little bit on it while I get a lot of other work done. But I don't know. It's looking like Starfield's probably going to be the thing that I'm more keen on. Just because, again, it's a real time game, and those are my preferences, just generally.
I think there's something, I have to say this about Baldur's Gate. This is just a conspiracy theory, but it's interesting. Is that I think whether or not Larian meant to do it, they kind of very brilliantly set the stage for a very high Metacritic score by making the game virtually unavailable, but of a very high quality early on, and then having these early scores come out very high. And then I imagine that anyone that comes and ruins that Metacritic score is going to think twice about doing that. I really do believe that there's like some sort of advantage that they either intentionally or unintentionally put themselves in, where that 97, I'm sure, is going to be pretty sustainable for them, because I can only, maybe some people don't care, but I wouldn't, I guess, care. But imagine someone coming in and giving Baldur's Gate like a 6, which would just blow that score up. And it's objectively very good. Like it's a very competently put together thing. It is really refreshing, especially to have something that's this big and sprawling and choice driven and feature complete and not, monetized to high heaven. It is really cool. But it's and I kind of tweeted this a little while ago, where like it's kind of shocking to me that a lot of developers are like, or not a lot of developers, we'll get into it later, but like that there was a whole conversation about the standards for Baldur's Gate being too high. And, I'm playing through it and I'm noticing some bugs. I'm noticing some things that don't work exactly the way that they should. And the only thing about it the thing that people like about it is the fact that, first of all, it respects their time. Or like it respects the fact that like this is a big game. It respects the fact that you paid $60 for this, or $70, however much you paid for this complete experience. It's going to give that to you. It's not going to rip you off. It's not going to throw some random mobile game store in front of you. It's actually an RPG full of choice. That's not a high bar, really. I don't. When I look at Baldur's Gate, I don't see a game that is so exceedingly incredible that no one can hope to match it. I see a game that is only rare because so few people choose to make it. And I understand why so few people choose to make it, because regardless of how much money Baldur's Gate 3 does end up making, it's still a fraction of what something like Fortnite would make in a fraction of the time. So I get it. The desire is there to chase that dollar. The desire is there to make a live service game that pops off in a way that you don't have to keep making. Like, you don't have to keep trying to make a new game all the time. You can manage this one live service and make a shit ton of money. That's like the goal for a lot of these, studios and publishers. I get it. But I don't think this game is like so unfathomably out of reach for most studios. I think if EA or, any of these other publishers wanted to make a game like Baldur's Gate, I think they very well easily could.
They just don't want to.
Well, this is actually one of the listener inquiries at the end of the show, so let's just read it right now.
Sure.
This is one of the 6. Steve Sober wrote in and said, "Hola, CDC. Recently, IGN's Destin Legary posted a video praising Baldur's Gate 3 for its polish and bug-free content, while bashing several other games that experienced poor launches. He claimed this was making AAA devs nervous, that the bar had been raised, and even mentioned comments from a specific indie developer. There's a lot of anger from devs and customers over this, and I was hoping to get your opinion. I read an article today on Twitter from Necrosofty where he bashed Destin's journalism for not investigating why some developers have difficulty with releases and new content. He also criticized him for not mentioning that Baldur's Gate 3 was in early access for 3 years, that Tears of the Kingdom has Nintendo's billions of dollars, and that From Software has earned its will be ready when it's ready attitude for Elden Ring. A lot of devs are constrained by publisher investor pressure to make money and meet unrealistic deadlines, and that lack of funds and or time makes it tough to get top-notch products out the door. Thoughts? Thanks." Yeah, I saw people getting mad about this. I didn't actually watch the video. I did read the response to it because it was much more manageable time-wise for me at that moment. I generally agree with you, Dustin, or Chris, rather, that this is being overstated in some sense. There are a series of things that help Baldur's Gate 3 be what it is, including licensing money, that early access, which I don't think is even brought up in that piece, although it might be, which is a big part of it, that this is a Dungeons and Dragons game really matters. And that helps.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, Larian, like they said, had years and years to work on this game and are kind of given the keys to a franchise which they didn't even have to create from the ground up. So they also have that advantage of working with other people's subject matter and all the rest. Dustin, I'm curious what you think about this whole idea about Baldur's Gate 3. The one thing I will say about Baldur's Gate 3, just as an aside, is that I think it's a low-key major deal that Sony has this coming to its console. And I know a lot of people are kicking around Xbox is not getting it specifically because of Xbox Series S. And people are wondering if this is the game that will finally bend Microsoft's policy. But I don't think it will be, in my opinion, because I think that why would you, like, what are the excuses then? It's like, well, okay, well, my game doesn't work on, as an example, like not my personal game, but you're a developer and saying like, well, our game doesn't work really on Xbox Series S. Can we skip it too? So because of that rock and a hard place that they find themselves in, this is like a huge advantage to PlayStation, kind of consequentially having this huge game just because of the nature of its console. So there's a lot to say here.
Right. And just as a quick clarification to save you from some comments, Larian has been very clear, and different developers on Twitter, that the Xbox version is still coming out.
Oh, no,
It's
I know that.
just-
I know
yeah.
that. I just
Right. And that's why I was clarifying.
I appreciate that. Microsoft dispatched apparently their own engineers to help fix the problem. So, and
Right. Yeah.
because it has to do with co-op, right? Or whatever.
Yeah. The split screen mode.
Which is so stupid. Why does this even have, it's fucking 2023, man.
Oh, I think it looks fun.
I don't. All right, go ahead.
I don't know if I would do it, but I think the idea of two people sitting down together and playing this RPG sounds cool. But as far as this controversy around the devs, I see it two ways, and then I totally agree with Destin's video in that why wouldn't we want a game like Baldur's Gate 3 to be the standard? Like, it's great value for money and its length. If that's the thing you care about more than anything, which we've talked about on the show, shouldn't be the only thing you care about. It's relatively well polished, but not, I would argue that, Steve here and there, it says bug-free content. It's 100% not bug-free. I can tell you that. But yeah, the lack of microtransactions and just stuff like that, of course, this is the type of thing that developers should strive for. But there is an element too where I can understand a developer not wanting people to compare everything to Baldur's Gate and be like, well, they were able to do with Baldur's Gate. It's like, well, yeah, they were building the kind of the groundwork for Baldur's Gate 3 with Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, and then the early access. So yeah, there was a pretty interesting particular circumstance with this game. I can agree with that aspect. So
yeah,
with a lot of online drama, the truth, I think, is definitely somewhere in the middle. There's truth on both sides, and there's some foul play, I would say, not from Destin in particular, but just from
foul play, Destin.
Yeah, no. Get out of here.
Let me say this before we move on because we could continue to talk about Baldur's Gate. We have more inquiries from the audience. I'm disappointed that people think that this is the height for games to reach simply by virtue of its deep design. It's the heights that a specific kind of game can reach. And
Yeah, I agree with that.
it's meaningless. Like what Baldur's Gate 3 does is meaningless to a first person shooter and what a first person shooter does, right? Like why would we even compare them? And go ahead.
Well, that's kind of at the heart of what I'm saying too, is like the reason people are praising Baldur's Gate 3 is because it's a really great example of what that genre is supposed to do. And it's an example of what that genre does that respects the player. And I think there's a lot of examples of that. Like we've already had, I would argue this year, we've had a ton of examples of games that do that. Like we had, Dead Space Remake and Resident Evil 4 Remake that I think are arguably like that is also the standard to me, as far as like a single player game goes. Like there's, and so to me, it's like, yeah, that should be the standard. Like these new examples of, and granted, those obviously are remakes of games that have come before. But even just, I don't know, this year is completely just smattered with incredible games. Like I would argue Hi-Fi Rush from earlier this year is another example of something that's like, this is great.
3 million players recently just passed. They announced that it passed.
Yeah, but like, dude, like it's just the quality of the experience that you're getting and what the game is trying to do, No one's arguing that, the next Halo game needs to have 5,000 deep characters with like different branching paths and a fucking romance line for every single character, and I need to be able to fuck a bear in Halo Infinite 2 or whatever. Like no, like I don't think anybody's really suggesting that every game needs to be as deep or as sprawling or as branching. I just think they're arguing that the quality bar needs to be at least at this point where it's like, this is a great game.
Yeah,
I think it should be.
I agree. Like for like, I think you're totally right. This was The Witcher 3 Fallout 4 tension in 2015. And unfortunately for Starfield, which I want to reiterate, I think my prediction for Starfield Metacritic is a 90. And I think it's going to be great and do great and sell lots of copies. I'm not trying to say that at all, but it's unfortunate that it's coming out before Baldur's Gate 3 because those games are more like to like, and people choices and consequences and all of that. A lot of not overt dice rolls in Fallout or in whatever in Starfield, but dice rolls nonetheless. And so, but I guess we kind of all agree, and I think Destin would even agree too, in the sense that we just can't holistically look at this as the broad meaning of what all games should be. Baldur's Gate 3, and I don't mean this in any other way than just straightforward, is irrelevant to me. And what it does is irrelevant to what I like about games. So for me, my high watermark has nothing to do with that game. And to kind of propagate that thought because of its high Metacritic score and kind of how it's capturing the industry right now as being all things all games should strive for, I think is silly. I could give a shit less how many choices you have in a game. I would rather you just give me a linear game. If there's going to be choice in it, like open world, for instance, like Dying Light 2 or something, then it's like the nature of the choice I like is just the order I do things. That's it.
Or just the
not
way
outcomes.
that you. Yeah. That's kind of how I feel about most games. As long as I have a seemingly infinite amount of choice in how to go about combat and like, what to do and how to dispatch and how to get through certain places, I'm fine with not having like narrative. Like narrative choice is really unimportant to me. Obviously in an RPG, it's still a little bit more important to me, but I would argue it's less important to me than being able to actively like exist in the world in real time, which is kind of what Baldur's Gate doesn't do for me that I think Starfield and Bethesda RPGs in general do for me more. So
I just think
we'll see.
It's funny you say narrative choice. It's that's where it's like narrative matters to me. Right. Yeah. Choice I could care less about. I remember talking about Uncharted 4 where I remember it being at PSX when they showed it, and Dustin, you might have been there actually at that PSX where they showed like the choices that they were going to make. They were just choices and conversations. They didn't matter, and everyone was freaking out. I'm like, this sucks. I don't watch this to make a choice. Nathan Drake is Nathan Drake. Who am I, dude? You make the choice. I'm here for your ride. So it's a good example, though a really mild example of worlds colliding where you feel like you need to do things that you really don't. And hopefully Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't influence people too deeply and outside of where it should be influencing people. I guess that's the point I'm making.
I think it should absolutely influence RPG design. I think it should absolutely, and without a question, it should be like a gold standard for CRPGs, especially because it is awesome. It's incredible. But, it's a CRPG. It's a very specific type of game that, it's not exactly my wheelhouse.
You not liking it just reinforces that I wouldn't like it.
Yeah, you probably would. Like,
no,
I know. I want to be clear.
I know I wouldn't. I watched so much. I want to be
clear. I want to be clear. I do like it.
It's right. Just the gameplay.
It's just like I want to jump around and beat people up. I don't want to make.
I'm the same.
I don't want to. Like, I'm sure you probably felt this way during even just Halo 2. Like, you could jump on fucking anything and, like, you could just kind of go.
Dude, the things that we're doing in Halo 2 were hysterical. First of all, I was making Dagan hysterically laugh because there was this glitch where one of my AI characters killed a brute or something, and the brute was dead and the body was down, and the guy just walked up to him and was just fucking piling hundreds of rounds into the body. Like, as if he wasn't dead. I was like, this is the funniest thing I'd ever seen in my life.
That's not a glitch. Some of the Marines are just, like, hyper aggressive. And they will kill enemies, and they will just continue to lay fire into them.
I love that. And the ragdolling was just hysterical. Like throwing a rocket at someone's feet and just flying off and off the geometry. I love that guy. But yeah,
that's the choice I like.
Right, exactly. Like, I want to be clear. Choice has really hit for me in specific games, but it's not something I seek out. I think, for instance, Mass Effect was such a revolutionary choice-based game, not only in within its own parameters, but also within the trilogy, that you couldn't help but be impressed by that, even though it didn't conclude like a lot of people did. So, like, if they brought Mass Effect back and they made that part of it again, I'd be like, that's cool. That's Mass Effect. But let's not get it into everything. Let's not get crazy.
Funny. The choices and the conversations remind me the most of Mass Effect in Baldur's Gate, as far as how it, you're dealing with.
Camp, it must be so much deeper than Mass Effect 2.
It's definitely deeper than Mass Effect. It's definitely of that. It reminds me of like those BioWare kind of games. The only place it differentiates.
BioWare made the original Baldur's Gate.
Yeah. But it's, I mean, obviously this is like a Larian game. It has a lot in common with Divinity as well. But
dude. Good. I want to finish your thought.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I like the conversations. I really like that part. It's just the moment to moment movement. Like, it's just that stuff. I just like. I want to. Sometimes I'll see a place that I can see, and I know my character can get there, and I can't get there, and it's like, it drives me fucking crazy. And I'm sure there's probably some way to get there that like I'm not thinking of, but like it shouldn't be that complicated. I don't know. Maybe I'm just an idiot. I can't do it.
This is a side note, but we've been talking about games moving around their release dates. How fucking clutch for them to move the release date up of this game like by a month, because originally Baldur's Gate 3 on PC was supposed to come out August 31st.
Yeah, the same day, right, as the PS5 version?
I don't know, because I think the PS5 version is was supposed to be a week apart, like September or something. So, but dude, if they had just kept that release date right beside Starfield, it would be, I think we'd be living, it would still be well received. Obviously, I think it would be one of those games where it was really well received, but the types of people like me who gave this game a shot, and Chris would have never done that. It's like, I have Starfield right now.
That's
so I feel like that decision to move the game up a month is like one of those like history altering decisions that they will forever be thankful that they're like, yeah, we pulled it off. It was maybe tough to get everything ready that quickly, but huge big brain move to move that up.
Yeah.
Let's see here. We have a couple more questions from the audience about this. We can get into a few different components here. Drew Sleazer wrote in and said, "Hey team, with Chris and Dustin checking out Baldur's Gate 3, there is one aspect of the game seldom discussed, and I'm curious about Colin's feelings. When creating a character, you have the option to select the background Dark Urge. This makes you a literal serial killer, completely changing how you interact with the world, quest, NPCs, and even party members. You are given unique choices that are extremely violent, kill things without much of a say, and even kill NPCs when sleeping, awaking to no recollection, just blood on your hands. Is this something any of you three would be curious to check out, or are you like me and reload saves when you say something wrong to a video game character?" I didn't know this. I knew this when you wrote in. I hadn't heard about this at all. It's very cool that you can do that. I don't know much about it beyond that.
So there are, I think, I want to say they're called origin characters, maybe. So you can create your own character totally from scratch, that you like choose the background and stuff like that. And you can actually choose to play the game as some of your main party members. You just play as that character. But yeah, the Dark Urge, to my understanding, this is one of the toughest ways to play the game. And I wouldn't want to do that as my first playthrough. This is something I'm curious about going back to, or even just checking out a little bit. But yeah, I've heard that it makes the game really tough. But it's neat to me that there are so many different ways you can choose to play this game, such as the different origin characters or whatever. So I'm intrigued. But Chris, have you heard of this? Did you see any? I've seen some videos on it, but
no, I mean, there's probably so much to this game that I will never see, and I'm okay with that. But like that is a cool little thing that's in there. I don't think I would ever bother to do this though. I feel like it would just make my playthrough a nightmare.
Yeah, I don't like playing as a bad guy either in games where there are choices. I have a hard time doing that.
Yeah, I don't like it either. I don't know.
Like Infamous or whatever. That was another good example of very basic. I think in Infamous there was something like 6 choices. It's like, okay, I can do that.
Yeah, I'd rather just like, I don't know, man. I'd rather just like have a game. Like if given the choice, I will always be a good guy.
Yeah, me too.
You know, generally, like, and I like games where you play as good guys, but like usually if like the whole Paragon and Renegade thing and like Infamous where it's like, oh, you could be good or you could be bad. I'm always going to choose good. So there's almost no point in putting the bad thing there. What they should do is make a game where you just play as the bad guy, like Prototype
did that, yeah.
Yeah.
One more inquiry. Robbie Cooper wrote in, said, "Hey, Sacred Crew, what's with all the praise Baldur's Gate 3 is getting without mentioning their stance on digital only for the time being? I was hyped for this game until I found out there was no physical release for PlayStation, and now I won't be buying it. How can games like Crazy Chicken Shooter get a physical release, but this refuses to do so? I'm willing to pay extra to secure that right. Will this be the beginning of the end of physical releases? If so, does this affect you at all? For myself, if everything goes digital, I'll stick to small indies and older games on my shelf. Thank you and make America physical again." Robbie, thank you for writing in. I saw that Spike Chunsoft picked up the Japanese publishing rights to the game, and they will be publishing it physically. I wonder it will work on your console. I just wonder if it will have the English language in it. If it does, then that's basically the problem solved for you. You can just import it. And I imagine it probably would have the English voice tracks in it since that's the base game. But maybe I'd be wrong about that. Because I would assume that we like to play, I mean, I don't really like to do this, but a lot like Dustin, nerds like Dustin like to play Japanese games in Japanese. You would assume Japanese people like to play English language games in English, right? Like the same kind of nerd, right? It's like how we talked about it. Is there like a Family Guy and Simpsons Japanese nerd that's like really into that stuff? Like that, like we're
like an otaku, but like in reverse,
right? Like an American otaku.
That's awesome. That's awesome to envision. Like they draw themselves in like Matt Groening style or whatever. That's such a vivid character.
Yeah.
What do you think here, Dustin? So are you going to get the Japanese physical edition?
No. So here's the thing for Robbie is that I'm a physical games lover. Obviously, the audience knows that. But that's not my number one priority with games. I am at number one a lover of games before I'm a lover of physical copies. And yeah, it sucks that there's not a physical version, particularly on, I guess PlayStation or PC, really, other than this Japanese version. But Robbie, you're gonna just things are changing, whether we like it or not. You're gonna be cutting yourself off from certain games if you're not willing to check them out digitally. I would imagine that a lot of games, particularly these big games, they will eventually come out with some kind of physical version down the line. Even a game like Cuphead or something eventually got physical releases. That I would expect that will eventually happen, but I don't know if it's the end of physical releases. And something I've been thinking about recently with this is that as I prepare for Japan, I've been checking out different video game stores. And in Japan, that's a place where physical games are very, very much alive. And I wonder if that's one of the reasons why we'll continue, particularly with PlayStation and Nintendo, just continue to see physical games because of that being their home market where it's so big there still. So
yeah,
we can continue to want physical games, but don't let it stop you from enjoying awesome stuff. You're just giving yourself pain.
Like Far Cry 5.
Point.
Available now on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5.
And digitally and physically.
Digitally and physically. That's basically it. And by the way, Laren, if you need a partner to publish in the West here, I'll bite the bullet and publish Baldur's Gate 3 through Last Stand Media.
Do we want to do a special edition with the Super Nintendo box?
I'll be very begrudging as I make millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars selling physical copies of Baldur's Gate 3. So if you guys need anyone, I'll take care of that for you. All right. That's it for what we're playing. Oh, no, actually, it's not. Chris, you are playing Halo Infinite. Do you want to say anything about that?
Well, I did want to mention it briefly because I was told and I haven't played it in a while, just because I mean I haven't really been playing anything aside from like Baldur's Gate stuff and Baldur's Gate 3 and stuff that I play for the show. And somebody recently, a friend of mine, was like, "Hey, you wanna get on? I hear it's good right now." And it's like, "Oh yeah, is it?" And I played for a bit, and yeah, they're right. It's in a really good space. There's a lot of new stuff coming constantly. I don't know if this was in the game the entire time, but like, there's a feature I just realized was there where you can move your weapon models. Like, you can customize like how your weapon displays on screen, which is like awesome because I hate a lot of first-person shooters used to do this and still do, where the guns are so fucking big on screen that they take up like an insane amount of the screen space to the point where it's like actually genuinely disadvantageous for you to even have it at the default setting. So moving your gun like down and kind of like to the center, so it's kind of pointing up a little bit is really nice. A lot of new legacy maps in there from Halo 2 and 3 that just got thrown in there, and a lot of playlists and stuff. It's in a good spot right now, which is nice. I still lament the fact that it had to slowly get here. And that will always be a blemish on this game's reputation as far as I'm concerned, because they really, so little has changed in the core fundamentals of the game where I'm like, damn, it sucks that this game was always fun and was always good, but they botched it for 2 straight years as far as like content delivery goes and just like feature completeness. That's a massive bummer. But playing it with some friends and, on voice chat, going through these old maps with these new mechanics, super fun, really enjoyable. So it's in a good spot right now, and I just wanted to, at the very least, give them a little bit of praise for getting it to a good place, despite the fact that it's infuriating that it took this long.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, it is infuriating. They can't get that reputation and that time back.
No,
without a lot
easily.
more, a lot more work. But glad it's in a good place. Maybe I'll get to it one day in the far-flung future. All right. Let's get into questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to end the show. You can submit them on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. I put up a thread each week in the news feed. You post in it. I go through them. You've heard a bunch of them already sprinkled throughout the show. The posts are put up on Wednesdays and are deleted on Thursdays, so you have a very brief time to post, but please keep an eye out for it. I delete the post so quickly so that you don't waste time when we no longer need it. We read one of them already during the extensive Baldur's Gate 3 discussion, and thus we have 5 inquiries from the audience. Saxon Miller wrote in and said, "Hello, esteemed gentlemen and Chris. Say you have a kid and they start getting into games. How would they try to tackle the last 40 plus years of backlog of amazing games? Go through every year's Game of the Year nominees, only play games that got 10s, play the games most talked about in history? Right now, we get to play games as they come out, but younger gamers aren't going to be able to play everything. And do you think the new games with all their advancements coming out will hinder a younger gamer from enjoying some of our favorite games? Love to hear your guys' thoughts and keep up the amazing, wonderful content." Thank you, Saxon, for writing in. This is a great question because my answer to this is pretty straightforward, is that you can't and you won't, and you shouldn't even try. Because it's not like film. Think of all the seminal films. I mean, I can only speak for myself as a casual movie watcher, I guess. There are seminal films I've not seen. Definitely not. And I don't know that off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's many films, like famous films, that I've not seen. And movies are not only passive entertainment, but relatively easy. Like, you could watch the Oscar nominated Best Picture films in a year if you like spent all your time doing that. Like, it's possible, right, to do that, like, from every year. But it's not possible to do that with games. It's just not going to happen. And I personally, this is what I say over and over again about being, and we all do to different degrees. Like, Dagan has the biggest advantage, for instance, inherently, of just having been there. Mm-hmm. So you just kind of get this stuff as you go and you glean it along. And so you have that experience. So you never have to go back and capture it, but it's not going to happen for younger gamers. So I think, in my opinion, I think players have to go back and figure out either platforms, genres, or companies that they're really interested in and start there and try to kind of learn about games through that way.
Yeah.
Being being hyper focused on PlayStation for so many years has been a major advantage for me. I'm an expert in the brand, like a complete expert in it. And that comes through the advantage of doing this professionally, but it also comes from the advantage of saying, like, I'm literally just going to do this, basically. And that comes with both advantages and disadvantages, and you need to be able to weigh those in your own specific circumstances. But I'm glad I did that not only professionally, but personally, because I think it's brought a lot of joy to my gaming and like renewed vigor over the years to my gaming by just being really focused on this one thing. So I feel for young players like being born today that will start playing games in 5 or 10 years. I don't know, man. It's gonna be a tough thing because these are not movies. And so I think you're gonna have to do some reading, and I think you're just gonna have to accept that there's gonna be a lot of stuff you don't know. And I think we take that for granted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chris, what do you think?
Man, I don't know. I because obviously I'm not the youngest anymore necessarily. Like I'm almost 30 now, but 1993 is like, I guess it's not super late, but it's after a lot of stuff. It's an entire handful of generations that like went by that I completely miss and I wasn't there for. And I don't necessarily lament that, because how could I? I have no concept of what it was like to experience Mario in 1985, and what that meant. I feel fortunate that I got in as early as I did. I feel fortunate that like there were kind of games all the way that there were always games around. I feel fortunate that I was able to experience the NES despite being born in 1993 and kind of playing through those Natsume games and the original Mario and Mario 3 and Duck Hunt and Excite Bike and those things. And I feel fortunate to have been there for like the later half of the original PlayStation and to experience that. But I don't know. I guess because I've been, and we've all been in this industry in some way or another for a very, very long time now, it's difficult to imagine just jumping in. And it's difficult to imagine what that would be like. But in reality, the people who are going to be jumping in around now or even later than now are probably going to feel completely fine with that because they just weren't around. I know it's simple to say, I guess, but I don't lament the fact that I wasn't around in the late 80s to experience that stuff. I'm sure there's stuff that I missed and that would have been cool, but there's still so much ahead and so much currently that's going to be really awesome to see too. And that's going to be true forever, by the way. Like in 2035, there are going to be people who are young now who are lamenting the fact that like, oh man, my kids aren't going to be experiencing like, I don't know, Red Dead 9 or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's always going to be a universal truth, I think, for games because they're just so long and so differently consumed than other media. And like music and stuff. Music's probably like the easiest thing in comparison, right? I would imagine.
Yeah, I think it's literature is the analog to games to me in some way because of the time spent.
Time investment, yeah.
Right. And you wouldn't be born today or in my era or in the 50s even or 100 years ago and been like, I want to read American literature. It's like, no, that's impossible. You can pick out, want to read F. Scott Fitzgerald, maybe a little Steinbeck, maybe getting a little Herman Melville, but you're not going to get to all of it. And I think it's kind of fascinating because you have a choice, but it's also a path that will choose and inform you moving forward. And there was, I was around when the NES was around, but I don't remember us getting it. We did get it around the time it came out, but I grew up playing the NES when it was a thing, and I got the SNES for Christmas and so on and so forth. So there's just inherent advantages just by virtue of timing, and that's it.
Yeah.
Dustin, I'm sorry. What do you think about this?
I think that, going back particularly for newer generations, I think is going to be tough because even for us who grew up with these games, when you go back, not all of them hold up. Certainly many, many games gone by. You think about a game like Mario 3 is always going to be amazing, but it will be tough. And I think that while there are certain games that need to be completed from start to finish in order to really be able to speak on them in some authoritative way, like Final Fantasy VI. That's a game, so story heavy that when you go back and play that, it's not going to be enough just to play a few hours. You have to go through and really experience it. But I think there are games that you can just go and kind of check out and peruse a bit, and you don't necessarily need to play all of them. I think it was around this time, well, not this time, but last year, I played some of the original Medieval on PS1 and got a feel for it, checked it out, didn't think it was very great. Not that it's bad. I think it has a fun style. It's a cute game, but it doesn't really hold up. But I didn't need to play all of it. And I think that's a way that you can go and just kind of experience some of these games, is just check it out for a bit. You don't need to necessarily beat Super Castlevania, but maybe you put 2 or 3 hours into it and see what it's about. And maybe you do finish it, maybe you don't. But there's a way that you can kind of fill some of those gaps. And the last thing I'll say is just that it's been a real priority for me over the past year, going back and filling in gaps and playing and replaying some old games. I haven't been as successful as I would have liked to have been, but I did play Suikoden 1 and get through that. And it's just really making sure if you want to do it, you got to carve out the time and plan to do it, especially if you're playing modern games at the same time, where it's like, hey, there's a gap between this game and this game. This is the time to do it. Instead of just meandering around with random stuff you kind of half want to play. It's like, no, now's the time to go back. So obviously you want games to be fun first and foremost. That's why we play it. But I think that having a little agency over how you spend your time and what you choose to play is also really helpful too. So a bunch of different factors, but like you said, ultimately you're never going to play everything. You're always going to have gaps. And so picking a specific area is good too, like trying to go back and just check out JRPGs or something like that is good.
Yeah, I think it's funny you say that, because one place my mind has been, especially since playing Halo 2, was I think you could basically spend some time and play every consequential Xbox game and actually have that done. At least games that are only available on that platform /PC. Mm-hmm. And I really think about Halo and Gears, and that's basically it. Maybe something like Quantum Break I would want to check out at some point. But there's virtually nothing else on the platform that was exclusive to the platform that I couldn't have already played that I would be interested in. And so there is some hope in some ecosystems, I think, for some of us, because I've not now played any of the Halo games after Halo 2, and I've not played any of the Gears games after Gears 4, I guess. And I'd like to be able to catch up on all of those and replay them and have them and do them on knockback and all of that. And then I think I'm basically like, well, what did I miss not playing Xbox anyway? No offense. I mean, there's not that much that was not available to me already. So I remember games that I even really loved on Xbox 360, like Shadow Complex, which was one of my very favorite games of that generation. That even came to PlayStation, eventually. It took an entire generation, but it did. So yeah, I think that you can probably count on 2 or 3 hands the number of Xbox games I would really need to play to have like a fulsome view of the ecosystem. I believe, from an exclusives point of view. But then you look at Nintendo, and it's like, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think from NES through GameCube, I have pretty much played every Nintendo game of any consequence, with very rare exception. I don't even know off the top of my head, like, what would be a game during that era during those eras that I didn't play that would be like, oh, how did you not play this? But by walking away from Nintendo as my full-time, or not it was never really my full-time machine after PlayStation came out, but by being like, I just can't do this anymore with the Wii, it allowed me to really hyper focus. And I think I've loved games even more than ever by doing that. So the beauty is that you have a lot of different options, but you have got to accept, dude, think about all the games that come out now that we just don't play. We already accept that. So you just really need to accept it moving backwards. That's why I hate the idea of backlogs. I hate them. Hate it. It's like, dude, a backlog. I mean, my backlog is an infinite. I don't know. There's games I could or should play, many. Thousands, probably, ultimately, around all these different platforms. Unshackle yourself from your backlog. All right. Justin Black wrote in and said, hey, CDC. It's feeling pretty dry on the PlayStation front for the past few months, and I'm curious to get a gut check from the Sacred Boys on how they're feeling about PlayStation right now. Specifically, the mysterious outlook for the latter half of 2023 and into 2024, and why Sony continues to take the silent approach to their roadmap. Any thoughts? I'll be curious to see what you guys think of this first and foremost. Dustin, are you muting?
Yeah, I'm muting. There's some fucker driving around on like a dirt bike that keeps circling my neighborhood. And it's
I'm
like,
not hearing it. I don't think.
What's that?
We have pretty good gating. I'm not hearing it. I don't think.
Yeah, Zencaster does a pretty good job, but when it's loudest is when I can mute it real quick. So
okay. Well, do you want to go second, or do you?
No, I'm ready to go. He's gone. I've got
Okay.
a few minutes till he makes his.
Was
lap.
Master Chief on his motocross?
He must have been. Yeah, he's on a mongoose or something. This is my gut reaction to first hearing this is that the gut check about the current state of PlayStation, and I've seen this a few different times where people are like, "What's going on with PlayStation right now?" You know, it's not very promising, and I'm like, bro. We just got Final Fantasy 16, which was fucking awesome. And if you really care, if you want to play console wars, then that's an exclusive. So you can, have that little, excitement that it's like, oh, no one's playing this but PlayStation fans. So yeah, good for you. But we have Final Fantasy 16, which is great. But then in addition, we have Spider-Man coming out in the near future. And I think that we talk about Sony's future, and I think that is something that right now we don't know a lot outside of the live service games we've been talking about here and there since that last showcase. But I just wonder if we're starting to see Sony change somewhat more into a company that's like Nintendo, where they kind of really they focus on one or two big releases and they really heavily market those. And then you maybe know a little bit about the future, but they really kind of focus on pushing one thing at a time. And you'll notice that with Nintendo is that after big releases happen, within 1 to 2 months is when they do the Nintendo Direct. And so Sony's been focused on releasing Final Fantasy 16 and then Spider-Man. And then I wonder if we're going to hear them kind of speak up again when it comes to starting the process of marketing the next big thing. Maybe not 1-to-1 with Nintendo, but you know what I mean? They kind of don't need right now to necessarily be having you think about all kinds of different games at once when they really just want you to be focused on. It's like, okay, Spider-Man, that's the game we want you to be concerned about right now. And also Helldivers, right, is another thing that they're also going to be pushing. And we've seen them do multiple trailers for, well, one additional trailer since that State of Play. So, or not State of Play, the showcase. So I think that this is just going to be a shift in how we get info from Sony. I think that some people don't like that. I mean, myself included. It's fun to be able to know what's coming and speculate, but at the same time, I don't think they necessarily need to let us know.
Chris, what do you think about what's going on with Sony?
I don't know, man. I don't think it's in a bad place. I'm kind of curious why. Like, I get that we want more information about what's after Spider-Man 2, but the fact that Spider-Man 2 is just sitting there waiting on the horizon and hasn't, we don't have it yet. It would be a lot scarier if we didn't have Spider-Man 2. I'll put it that way. Like if we didn't know what 2024 would be and also Spider-Man 2 was just not there, I could see why people would be like, yo, what's going on? But I mean, like Dustin said, we like Final Fantasy 16 just came out. We have Spider-Man 2 right there on the horizon. That's going to be a big, big game. And there's still so many games that are coming to the ecosystem from third parties that like I just don't know what the concern is really. Like I kind of I don't get it personally.
I feel like it's a concern if you really care about console war stuff. You don't have your big hitters to brag about or something.
Well, I agree with you there, Dustin, but I think it's more than that because I think it's understandable if you're just a PlayStation fan. You're like, where the fuck are the games? I think there's,
but that's what I'm saying. We're in the midst of two amazing exclusives.
I'm saying in the future, right? Like
sure,
2024 and beyond. We have never seen Sony hold their cards this close to their vest ever. That is true. It's never been like this. So it is a new environment. I think it's understandable.
If there is no state of, or not a state of play, if there is no showcase, then like after Spider-Man 2 or around the time of Spider-Man 2, I would probably be a little concerned. That's how I would feel about it.
Yeah, I will be. If they don't say anything, let's say after the Video Game Awards, which is their last chance probably, about something we don't know about already, then I would. I was explaining this to Jez when I was on his podcast, where I was like, there's a part of me that gets this is probably the most fanboyish part of me with PlayStation, where it's like, it's exciting that we don't know what it is, because it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Right. It just means that they haven't said anything yet. So there's some tension that's quite exciting about that to me, where it's like, oh, what the fuck are you doing?
100%.
Like, there are opportunities. Like Xbox kind of went and showed you what their next games are, which is cool, but you know what they are. So that's that, right? And so Sony still gets a chance to go, and there's something exciting about that. But here's what I think the deal is. I think you can look at it from two different perspectives. It's like, what's the deal with Sony? Well, they've sold 42 million PlayStation 5s, so they're basically on PS4's trajectory. They last quarter sold something like 60 million games on the console. Only 10% of them are for first or second party, so clearly it just doesn't seem to matter. And they're making more money than they've ever made on PlayStation. And PlayStation is the biggest part of Sony. So on one hand, that's what's going on with Sony. On the other hand, there is... So this is a weird reference, but stick with me. Chris, you know, and Dustin, you probably know too, but the European electronic song that's been going around the last few weeks. Like,
yeah.
So,
Planet of the Bass, right?
Planet of the Bass, dude. Yeah.
So I don't know anything about the Jonas Brothers, but I thought this was really interesting. The Jonas Brothers are touring, doing an arena tour right now. At, I think, a stop in New York or something, might have been an MSG or something. They had the girl and the guy that does that song play it live, or do a live mime of it. And no one in that building had any idea who the fuck they were.
Yeah.
Like, that was the most interesting part about it, was like maybe 5%, maybe not even, of the people that were there, these young, tuned in, probably very captured by media and in different ways, had no idea what that thing was. I have seen nothing but that for weeks. And I guess the point I'm making is that you have to kind of look at video games that way. Mm-hmm. That even the people that are tuned in and connected do not give a shit and about what is coming far beyond. And they're working, they have kids, they hear about Starfield on a TV commercial, they're going to hear about Spider-Man 2, whatever. And I just think that that's kind of who Sony's working with now.
Yeah.
And they realize that we are going to be there regardless. And that Spider-Man's good for probably lifetime. I mean, the install base right now is much lower, but you have to look at 10 million copies ultimately probably for Spider-Man 2 when all is said and done. That'll be very ambitious on 40 million consoles, but not on 60, let's say, as they get further and further. So I just think that that's an important thing to kind of introduce into the conversation, is just the idea we all understand but don't really take seriously, that when we say the internet isn't real life, we really mean it.
Yeah.
And that Jonas Brothers thing was really shocking to me.
It wasn't that shocking to me, because there is like the Jonas Brothers isn't exactly like a young, like the Jonas Brothers were around when I was a kid, and they were popular when I was like in high school, or like even earlier than that probably. So like you have to imagine that the audience of the Jonas Brothers, people who would go to a tour of theirs, is probably like around either my age or older, and maybe aren't necessarily that. And like, because I did see like those that video of people being like, yo, what the fuck? What is this? I'm so confused. But then there were a handful of people who were like, I noticed a lot younger, who were like singing along to it. It wasn't like a lot of people. It was probably like maybe 10% of that arena, maybe, if that. But it is fascinating to imagine that like this thing that we've been inundated with, that is almost like hopeless to escape, is like completely escapes that many people. Even just on a numbers game, not even percentage wise, just like that many people in an arena have no clue what this is, or have any clue like what it, like where it comes from, or why it's even. Probably an even fewer percentage of people who know what it is understand what it actually is. Like that it's like a joke, like it's a satire of Euro trash, you know, like
right.
Like I'm sure even fewer people know that, or like who that person is, who that TikToker is, who that Billiana Electronica or whatever. It's an
awesome,
so good,
awesome name.
So
yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that song, by the way. That full song came out and it was actually great. Like I haven't seen something that hyped up live up to expectations in a very, very long time.
The other thing that I need to say in closing is that when you remove the drama, right, and look at things from a high level, you realize we actually know more than you think. we know about Death Stranding 2, Fair Games, Concord, right? Rise of the Ronin, even smaller games like that Evo Tinction game coming from China, Stellar Blade, right? The reality, Wolverine, the reality is actually there are quite a few things announced. They're just not presenting PlayStation to the core in a cogent fashion. And I don't know that anyone would disagree with that, but I think they just look at it, and I keep bringing up the early 80s movie War Games recently with Dagan, where they say the only option is to not play. And it seems like they look at it in a similar way, where there's just too much downside to saying anything, and they just don't see the urgency. So they just don't say anything. And I don't know, you can really argue with that until there's truly something to argue with. And I think that when will there be truly something to argue with? That after VGAs. If the situation is as it stands now, and we have Spider-Man and Helldivers already out, then I'll be like, oh, this is weird. I mean, it already is weird, but then you have to really assume that, and this is what you get from a lack of E3s, a lack of TGS, really huge presentations, Gamescom. And that's true. Plus PSX, all of that. We don't necessarily need that, but there's no doubt that there's a hollowness now, because there's no 90-minute force feed. Yeah. At least once a year, you know? Foam Stars. Yeah. Perhaps game of the generation for all we know. Doubt it. Yeah. So I understand the optimism. I understand the pessimism. I think that we're going to get a better framing of all of this later on. I also think a specific game is coming out next year, Grand Theft Auto 6, that's going to make many things irrelevant. And I think that a lot of companies are just aware that there's a window probably in the fall of next year where I don't know what you're going to do if that game comes out. I mean, it's basically over for you.
Yeah, it's a feeding frenzy.
Yeah.
At that point.
So I think there's something, I'm not saying it's specifically that, although Take-Two is being much more specific as time goes on with when that game's going to drop, just by saying like, this is our bookings prediction. This is the specific quarterly, scatter that we're planning it in and all the rest. I just think we have to look at things from many different perspectives. We don't have all the internal information either. But do I understand the fear a little bit? Sure I do. Andrew Ironreich wrote in and said, hey, CDC, over the last year or so, I played a bunch of amazing indies and AA games that absolutely wowed me. Among other things, the visual art styles. Games like Gris and Hades, Ori, and Psychonauts 2. These really show off what can be done with games as a visual art form. What are some games you think deserve recognition based on their art style, and especially with OLED and QD OLED TVs becoming more widely used? Games that will make these screens truly pop. This is a really interesting question. Chris, I know you're really passionate about this topic because we talk about it quite often, about the race to realism and how there needs to be studios that understand the race to stylization that can also happen with technology. Yeah. That you don't need to make everything super realistic. What are you thinking about the recent art stylings of games? Is there anything that speaks to you from an artistic standpoint, either historically or recently?
I mean, probably a lot that it's almost difficult to narrow down in my head. There's so many things kicking around. I think something like Ghost Runner was very striking. I really liked how that looked. I mean, Hades is obviously a great example. Hi-Fi is one that I point to a lot because of the stylized, cartoonish kind of nature of that. I think back to even something like BioShock, which you don't necessarily think of as being like a stylized game. It certainly is. Like BioShock is not. Nobody in BioShock looks like a real person, and I don't think that's largely intentional. I think about even games like like Limbo and Castle Crashers from back in that time. Stuff like Death Spank and Oddworld. There's a lot, like, and these are like, some of these are like really high, some of these are like really like niche, obscure games. The new System Shock remake looks really cool. It's got this like kind of like lo-fi kind of high res, low res kind of Blade Runner type thing going on. It's like really, really, really pretty. Man, my mind is kind of being overwhelmed with
that's
how
a lot
much there is. But something that not even just from visual style, but I do think something that I think could be really advantageous for a lot of developers to understand is how stylized presentation works really well too. And one of the games that I always think about, like a really, really underappreciated and arguably somewhat unfinished game from Pandemic back in the day, The Saboteur, which was, it was like a game in Nazi occupied Paris, and you went around liberating certain areas, and it was black and white until you liberated the area, and then color would be like restored. And I just thought that was so cool. As like a premise and as like an idea of presentation. Okami, obviously, there's like a million, man. Like there's so much, and those are really the games that speak to me more than, I don't know, something like realism or things like even just modern Call of Duty or stuff like Uncharted, where like it's leaning into a bit more of a realism style. I do want more developers to really embrace different stylistic interpretations of what things are supposed to be and how games can look. Agreed. without necessarily defaulting to, the Fortnite aesthetic, which is admittedly less of a problem now than it used to be. Like, I remember there was a period, I don't remember exactly the years exactly, but like, I think like maybe like 2020, 2019, 2021, maybe, like that sounds right to me, where a lot of games came out and they were genuinely indistinguishable from Fortnite, or they looked like that exact art style. Not that art style is bad or it's a problem, but keep it fresh. Stuff like Psychonauts 2, I think, looks incredible. I'm really happy to see that happening in the film industry as well, with like Spider-Verse and even that new TMNT movie, which is like visually stunning on like many, many different fronts. How they do smoke in that movie is really cool. But I just want more of that. And what was that one? This is the last one I'll bring up. But Scribblenauts I thought was really cool.
Oh yeah,
that's like
cool.
a very, very not. I don't know if it's obscure, but like it feels obscure to me.
Scribblenauts was an awesome idea. Really, really novel, handheld,
very cute,
DS centric idea. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
They could have done more with it.
Yeah. The game itself isn't necessarily like incredible, but like I do like that exists in a game at all is really cool.
Yeah, what was the last? There was like a couple of them, I think, right? Scribblenauts. Yeah, Scribblenauts Showdown. What was that? That's a party game. That's on PS4. Yeah. But yeah, like Scribblenauts and Super Scribblenauts. I remember those, 2009, 2010. Yeah, DS was perfect. DS had so many unique games. I loved the first true video game idea I ever had myself, like as a game I would design, was for the DS. It was I was designing like a Revolutionary War management game.
The DS
would be cool for it. Yeah.
The DS has a special place in my heart because it was the first time that I actually experienced all of Super Mario 64 on the DS.
Oh yeah, they had some good ports on DS and 3DS.
Yeah, really good ports. Like that was like an awesome. That's a great version too, because you could play as like whoever. It's really cool.
DS was still very much in my Nintendo life. Dustin, where are you on this question of stylization?
Yeah, so Chris covered a lot of the art direction, but specifically Andrew asked about games that their art style really pops on OLED. And the two games that I wrote down, I guess OLED, and we'll just say HDR as well, particularly for OLED, Tetris Effect is a game that has so much unique and diverse style in its different stages. And on OLED and HDR is truly an amazing experience. Turn off all the lights, get some headphones or a nice sound speakers. No TV speakers allowed on Tetris Effect. Absolutely not. And it's amazing. It's truly one of my absolute favorite experiences in gaming. Is that the other one? I remember particularly being impressed with its HDR implementation. A game you wouldn't expect is Guacamelee 2. Has a really awesome 4K. I don't know if it's quite 4K. It looks really nice, very sharp presentation in HDR. That also their lighting in it looked really, really stinking good. That was one of the things in my early days of doing like developer interviews and talking to people on the show floor. I talked to Graham from Drinkbox, and that was the thing. He's like, I'm glad you noticed the new lighting is something we're really proud of in this game. And it's funny because you wouldn't think about a lighting system in a 2D game like Guacamelee, but it's really, really quite impressive and looks awesome. So those are the two immediate ones that if you've got a nice new TV, you're looking for something with some good stylings, nice HDR, check those out.
I can't speak to HDR. I don't know. A couple of these probably do have HDR support, but certainly not all of them. But I went through my trophies and picked out 6 games that came out in this generation, the PS5 generation, that I thought were interesting stylistic games. Bandai Namco's Scarlet Nexus is one of those games that has a really interesting and unique art style that kind of fuses anime with this very weird floral enemy design. I think we're going to get another one of those, so I'll be interested to see more of that. Drinkbox came up, so I put Nobody Saves the World as a game that I think has a really unique and lovely aesthetic that's different than realism. In the AAA space, I put Deathloop. I think Deathloop has a cool take on human enemies, and the camp of that game I think really screams through its aesthetic. So shout out to Deathloop as well, and Arcane. And then a couple games I didn't beat, actually. Octopath Traveler 2, and just the whole 2D HD thing that is going on at Square Enix is just absolutely stunning. That game, I got distracted, and it's a deep game. I got to start it over again, and one day I'll do that. I'm not going to do it anytime soon, but and I also kind of felt stupid playing that without playing the original one, but I tried. But there's something so undeniably alluring about the way it looks. It's just so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I love it. I loved the way that game looked. I just thought it was really great. The other game that I didn't beat, although I got to the very end and then just never beat it for some reason, that I thought was really cool from the very appropriately named Isometric Corp is Tunic. I thought that game was really beautiful too, and it had a really unique art style. And then finally, Mechanical Head's game that was published by Yacht Club, Cyber Shadow. I brought this up because Cyber Shadow is a 2D 8/16/32-bit style game in that vein, and these games are a dime a dozen now in a lot of different ways, and so you have to find the ones that truly look great in their own way. And I think that Cyber Shadow was just really minimalistic and beautiful, really stuck to what felt like a fusion of NES and SNES, like some in-between lost machine that existed between them. It just read like that, and I thought it was really, really beautiful and really interesting. And I think I'm going to feel a similar way when that Mina the Wanderer game comes out finally from Yacht Club, the new game that looks like it's going to look like maybe a Game Boy Pocket or a GBA game. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
And if they really stick to that aesthetic, I think it's going to make it shine and really sing. So those are my shouts for stylized art. And speaking of all these indies, Michael Hurley wrote in and said, "Hey, CDC, how much of your gaming time do you spend on indie games? I feel like I need a balance of indies in my life, and it can't be all AAA. AAA games are less inventive and are often too long. I do love them, but there's no doubt that God of War Ragnarok and Final Fantasy 16 were padded out. I've rolled credits on 33, I hate that term, on 33 games so far this year, and 15 of them have been indie games. It's about half my gaming. How about you guys? Does indie gaming excite you as much as it does me? I recently finished Guacamelee, oh, there you go, and an Inscription, and they were fucking awesome, and now I'm playing Synapse on PSVR 2, and that game also fucking rules. I feel like a kid again, and it reminds me of why I love gaming so much. I love that I can experience all these great gaming ideas and be done in 10 hours and move on to something else cool." Dustin, let's stick with you. Where are indies in your life today?
I was just reviewing, particularly this year, I've been super light on indies. I started out the year finishing Cult of the Lamb, which I really enjoyed. And then other than just checking out some things here and there, the only other indie game that I think I fully completed was Viewfinder. So, I guess that just speaks to this year where I've had very little want for figuring out something small to play or something in between. And not that I want to put indie games as on a lesser than for AAA games, but a lot of the times between AAA games this year, I've just been going back and playing some older games, whether on PlayStation or something like that, the original PlayStation. So not very many this year, but I think there will be some coming up. Particularly Sea of Stars is a game that I'm really interested in checking out. And it's not anything intentional. It's just, I don't know, there hasn't been very many indie games that have really quite compelled me to check out this year.
I'm a similar way. I'm actually drowning in AAAs this year. It's just been an unusual year, but I've still snuck in a few indies. I have a deep love of indie games as an indie dev, but also as just I've always loved smaller games. When the downloadable games started in earnest on Xbox 360 and PSN and on PS3, I was amped. I was like, this is so awesome. And I remember people were so hesitant. Like there were years where you guys probably remember people like, those aren't real games. And we would call them downloadable games. And I'm like, you guys fucking suck. These games are awesome. And so I do try to give my credence to as many as I can. And this year, the only examples that I have of note would be I played in Platinum that game Bat Boy, which is basically kind of like a Shovel Knight-esque inspired game. And it was awesome. I loved that game. And then Gravity Circuit, I need to get back to. I got to the very end and I couldn't beat the last boss because I wasn't powerful enough. So I need to go and collect some things. But that was a really well done game too. The Light in the Darkness is an indie game that I played all about the Holocaust. It's free on PS5. You can check that out. And then, as I noted, Rogue Legacy 2 I would consider indie, although it's really tough. Like the word indie used to mean something so much different than I think it does now because there's just different independent developers, and IO Interactive is an independent developer, but I don't consider them an indie. And it's hard for me to even call something like Cellar Door that makes Rogue Legacy 2 an indie. They made an enormous amount of money on Rogue Legacy. It's just, there's nothing wrong with that. I just think that there's different levels to it as well.
Yeah. That's like Humanity. I'm looking at my PlayStation profile right now, and I did check out a bit of Humanity, but what is that indie? I mean,
technically, I guess it is, but yeah, again, that's an expensive indie game, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So, indies in your life, Chris?
Not so much lately, honestly. Like that, I remember like that 360 generation specifically, like when Limbo and Splosion Man and Super Meat Boy and even just stuff like the Dishwasher and like
XBLA was killing it.
Yeah, it was honestly like incredible, and I fell in love with. I think it was Limbo really that like drew my attention and was like, this is kind of, and Shadow Complex, obviously you mentioned earlier.
Like, I love that game. Summer of Arcade, right? That's what they used to call it.
Yeah, although like is Shadow Complex an indie? Because that was Epic, right?
Well, yeah, it was Chair, but I think before they bought them, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So like, I mean,
because remember after they did Shadow Complex, they did Infinity Blade and became huge.
That's right. Yeah.
Because everyone was like, why don't you go back to Shadow Complex? And they're like,
no.
Because we're making millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. That's why we're not going back to Shadow Complex.
Yeah, and even just like studios like the Behemoth when they would do like Castle Crashers and Alien Hominid, which like I mentioned earlier, Battle Block Theater and stuff like that. I was really big on it, and then I don't know. At some point, I feel like indies kind of shifted into this space of it was less about kinetic stuff or kinetic gameplay and more about kind of like atmospherics. I think about a recent one that I played a while ago, like maybe like a year and a half ago, called like Lake. Where you
is that the one where you're the mailman?
Yeah, you're just like a mail lady, and you're kind of going around this town, and you're like interacting with.
That looks cool. I want to play that.
It wasn't bad. It was kind of a cute little game, but it also like when I think back to the indie games that really spoke to me, things like Limbo and Splosion Man and Super Meat Boy especially. Like I loved Super Meat Boy. I feel like a lot of modern indie games don't really give me that feeling of. I feel like that's really where side scrollers really kind of came back into their own, and
definitely.
And I really like that aspect. Things like I love Cyber Shadow, Katana Zero was another one. I don't know if is Rollerdrome an indie, because it feels
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's kind of the lines are kind of weird as to what, but I remember Splitgate was another one that was huge. Splitgate I was really kind of stapled onto for a little bit.
No. By the way, Rollerdrome is private division, so no.
Oh yeah, never mind. But that's what I mean. Like that's a game that like when I played it, I was like, this feels like an indie game. You know what I mean? but it's not, and so it's like I don't know. I do feel like I do find myself more gravitated to things that are kinetic, and I feel like a lot of indie games are very experimental right now, which is really cool. But it doesn't speak to me as much as like I think AA speaks to me at the moment, and even back then, to be honest. Like I really love that space in between indie and AAA where there are like really interesting and risky concepts being done that don't have this insane amount of focus on realism or perfect polish. Like you can kind of see the flaws in it, and it doesn't deteriorate from it. I like that space a lot.
That game Vampire Survivors seems to be like a modern.
Oh my god,
Oh, yeah, I
dude.
forgot I played that.
Dude.
Of
That
an
game
indie game.
rules.
It comes to it's not on PlayStation.
Yeah.
Probably because they're being paid not to put it on PlayStation, which makes perfect sense. It's interesting that it's only okay for some people to do and not others. But
Yeah.
But it's on Switch now too.
Yeah, I saw that.
It just came out there. Yeah.
It's probably
so
I'd actually probably just play it on Xbox because we have the Xbox connected now, but I'll just wait. It'll come to PlayStation at some point.
It's so good. It's so
And-
good.
Yeah.
It's
But we
so
don't-
good.
That's the last time I remember. Well, the most recent example of there being like what I would consider to be some sort of indie phenomenon, akin to remember like when Hotline Miami came out, or
Oh yeah.
which was
yeah.
I loved. I absolutely love that game. I think that game's awesome.
Gorgeous.
And it is, and it's so interesting and brutal and fun and fair, which I really
Yeah.
love. It's just totally all about you and your own skill. Games like Race the Sun, I thought were really, really compelling back in the day, and others. But there's just, it seems like indies have to kind of reinvent themselves now, do something new and different, generally speaking. And I'll continue to play their games, and I'm sure this year is very weird. I'm sure there'll be a higher percentage, or my percentage of indie games will revert to a higher percentage, maybe beginning next year.
Yeah.
Finally, Argus Forever wrote in and said, "What up, CDC? How has gaming affected your romantic relationships? I constantly get weird vibes from women when I talk about my love of games, and a lot of them just don't understand it. Have you ever had women who broke it off with you after learning you're a gamer? Have you ever had a hard time balancing gaming and giving attention to your partner?" I will say in my own experience, I don't know that anyone I've dated told me they cared, but they may have and acted in such a way that they cared without telling me. But it's always been a part of me, and I personally think that at the quote unquote worst experiences I had with partners in gaming was just complete indifference, which I'll take. Micah is the first person I've ever dated and been with that plays games and enjoys them on her own. So I find the balance to be a lot better because we both want to play games. So we both, I think I could do probably even a better job of trying to like turn games off sometimes and just do other things. But she generally understands that that's a really important part of my job is to just stay current. And I kind of just try to dedicate at least a little time every day, at the very least, to gaming. So I think thankfully I've had people that have understood or been indifferent or maybe have just kept it to themselves. But I've never had like a below. When I hear people being like, "Oh, I have to," well, we were kidding around with the beep the PS5 makes. Like, that's funny to me.
Yeah.
That's a thing, but it's never been a thing in my life. I think I could totally get it. I know the kind of woman that would be upset about that, all the rest, but where are you, Dustin, you're married, so but your wife, Holly / Haley, is she's a gamer. Right?
Oh yeah.
She games.
She's a big gamer.
Capital G
gamer. What's funny is that she grew up with some games. You know, she had a Game Boy Advance, but her dad wasn't real keen about having a console in the house. But she was big on PC games. Like she played Civ 3, just crazy amounts of hours with that game, and Roller Coaster Tycoon, stuff like that. One of the greatest games of all time. And so it wasn't really when we started dating that she was kind of excited to experience games through me at the time. And so I remember telling her about Skyrim, and she's like, "Oh, that sounds really cool. I kind of want to check that out." And so I got her Skyrim, and she played it on her school laptop. It didn't run very well, but she, through that, and you know, it's been many years now, but she's really gotten into games. And like right now she's playing Pikmin 4 and she's really dedicated to it. But she's played all kinds of stuff like Zelda, of course. She beat Breath of the Wild before I did. She beat Tears of the Kingdom and plays Civilization and is better than anyone I know at it. But as far as how it affects our relationship, it's nice for me in particular that she knows kind of just through osmosis, right? Like about what's going on in the games industry. And so sometimes she'll ask me about stuff. Like I was telling her a lot about the ABK deal because she would see things online or she would like hear me listening to a video or edit one of our videos. She's like, "Oh yeah, that sounds like a big deal. Tell me what's going on here." So it was kind of a fun way to explain to someone who kind of knew, but not really, just to kind of like sharpen my own information about it. And then as far as time balancing, I don't know. We always make sure like we try to have dinner together as often as we can. Our schedules don't always line up to be able to do that with her teaching and stuff like that, but we try to spend time eating dinner together, and then we watch shows together almost every night. And then there's a beautiful thing of being alone together. And you shouldn't only do that exclusively where you're kind of doing your own thing in, you know, the same room or something like that. But that's a perfectly healthy way to live as well, where I'll be playing a game on PlayStation or whatever on the TV, and she'll be playing on Switch, or she'll be reading a book or something like that. And we're present together. And
that's a lot of what we do. Yeah. At night.
Yeah. And maybe I'll point something out. I'm like, oh, look at this happening in the game, or she'll show me something on her game. And so that's like a really healthy way to handle it. But I understand there are some guys that may just kind of be like, I'm playing games, don't bother me, and then is gone for 3 to 4 hours a night. And that's definitely not healthy either. You got to find the right balance for those things.
Chris, have you ever had any games related relationship problems?
No. Now that I think about it, like,
we're lucky,
I don't think,
I guess.
I don't think I've ever had. Well, the thing is, because like I've never hid that fact. You know what I mean? It was so obviously, it was so blatant to anybody that even knew me or knew of me from friends, that like, and even just my friends, the circle of friends that I hang out with, they're all tech oriented in some way. So even the women that would find themselves in that circle of friends were at least somewhat adjacent. I dated. The worst it got was that like I would date people that just didn't play at all, and they didn't care, like they didn't mind it, like it wasn't like a problem for them. But I was pretty upfront about like everything that I enjoyed. Like there was no way you were going to come into my room as a teenager or come into my apartments as a full grown adult and not understand like the things that I like. It's pretty fucking apparent. So like, it was never a thing that would have to come up. It was like, oh, she found out I'm a gamer and then she left. It was like, that would never.
That was never like closet as a gamer.
Yeah, that would never be a
closeted gamer.
That would never be a problem. And so like I dated women. I dated girls who like I dated girls who were like into Stardew Valley and The Sims, and then others who were like, oh man, I really like Assassin's Creed, and it's like, you know, like it's cool, it's fine. It's never proved to be a problem in my life personally, and maybe that's lucky. But I also feel like there's an aspect of just. Like, I really do feel like if this is happening to you, there's like a level of shame that you must feel inherently from playing video games anyway. Because like, how would this even evolve into a problem in the first place? Unless you're A, hopelessly addicted, or B, hiding it for some reason.
The closeted gamer. I love that. That's
like,
so
I just don't get it. Like, I don't get how that would even.
I agree.
I fundamentally don't understand.
I think probably what ends up happening to some people, or a lot of guys, is they get into relationships and then they're slowly allowing it to be seen more, or they're getting more comfortable or whatever.
Right.
And then it hits some sort of line of delineation for the woman where she's like, I can't take this anymore. But let me say this, is that I don't understand, as long as everything's in good measure, right? I don't understand what's so bad about playing video games as compared to just sitting there and watching a TV or whatever. Well, there's no, in fact, I think games would be much more enriching from multiple perspectives. That's what annoys me, is that a lot of women will probably be like, well, I don't want him to play games. And then they'll sit there and watch TV for 5 hours. And it's like, well, what is the difference? You know?
Yeah. My favorite thing is when partners would genuinely be interested in like watching me play, you know, or they would be like writing something or like doing their own thing. Sometimes playing something of their own, or just like genuinely being interested in what was going on screen. Like if it's like a story heavy game or something, like I remember, playing The Witcher was like really engrossing for my partner at the time. And and then she started playing The Witcher. She finished The Witcher actually, which is crazy. I still haven't done that, but you know, like I just don't think, I think I make it so clear that this is a part of my existence, and if you're not okay with that, then there's really no reason for this to even begin in the first place. Definitely. And so it's never really proved to be a roadblock of any real consequence.
Same.
I think it's worth pointing out, you know, we're joking about the closeted gamer, But it is true. I'm always surprised hearing about people that put on a front of someone who they really aren't in relationships, and then so you start a relationship based on a facade. And obviously right now we're talking about it being video games, but that is kind of an important thing that, you know, if the person you end up dating or getting into a serious relationship has a big thing against games, then it's not good that you put on a front and acted like you know, that you had to change part of who you are. And by the way,
I just can't conceptualize how it even gets to that point. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this person despises games to the point where it's like borderline like religious and weird. Like,
kick that person to the curb.
How does that lead to a second date in the first place, or even a first date? Honestly, like, I can't. How the fuck am I gonna hide this like this Halo 2 fucking tarp on my wall? Like, I'm not gonna rearrange my fucking house to appeal to somebody that I just met. Like, it's not happening.
The write-in says about constantly getting weird vibes from women. You talk about the love for games. You're talking to the wrong women. There's tons of women out there that love games, and if they don't love them, they at least respect it as a hobby. So, you know, you're looking for women or love in all the wrong places, it sounds like.
Yeah,
so
I genuinely, I'm not even joking. Like, in my current existence, I do not have whether it's a female friend or acquaintance or whatever who does not play games in some capacity. Whether it's like Sims, Stardew Valley, fucking, you know, Witcher, Hades, it's always something. And that's out there, man. Like, I just, I don't know where people are looking. I don't know. I can't even conceptualize where you don't find these people, just because my entire circle is comprised of these people. So,
Whammon.
Wham.
Mike and I have a joke where we use the word woman, but like with bunches of different spelling, like whammon, woman, women with an I, woman.
What about the X? The
WXMEN, or is it WOMXN?
It's WOMXN.
XN, right? Got to get that in there too. I don't think I've used that one yet.
WOMXN.
All right, my friends, let's get the hell out of here. It's time to go. It was a slower week this week, but we still went, you know, way longer than we probably should be. It was fun. Chris, do you have any closing comments, my friend?
Oh man, nothing. I gotta prep for this hurricane that's headed our way.
I know, I saw that. It's so interesting. You'll be fine. You gonna go get food or whatever and stock up?
Yeah, I guess I'll just, I don't know. It makes a hurricane hitting Southern California makes no fucking sense. but whatever. I guess everything's totally fine. There's nothing untoward going on. There's no plastic in our rain. Whatever. It's fine.
Yeah, we're all fucked. It's totally obvious. I was watching. I get so many. YouTube just feeds me. It's my own fault. I've been watching Solo Sailing recently. I don't know if you guys know what that is. It's so good.
I have no idea.
Dudes get like, you know, they're not like rickety boats, but they're sailboats, and they just sail across the Atlantic Ocean or they sail across the Pacific Ocean, and they just do it by themselves, like alone. And it's so interesting. And so I think because of that, I started getting recommended like weather, but like deep weather analyses of like,
Ryan
this
Hall?
is what I don't know if
do you know him, Ryan Hall? He's Holly watches him sometimes.
He like does like these analyses of like, you know, seasonal weather, like forecasts and stuff like that. And he was saying that this winter is going to be horrifying for the East Coast. So that should be interesting.
Good.
We don't really, in my experience being here, so this will be my 4th year here, it seems like every other year. Like the first year I was here, there was snow, and then the second year no snow, and now snow, and then snow. I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm looking forward to the shitty weather. Stay safe, my friend. Build your rat. California, we always said California was going to fall into the ocean. We didn't anticipate it was going to be through a hurricane, but maybe that's the case.
Yeah.
Dustin, goodbye. Closing comments.
I have 2 quick comments. I'm pulling the Chris today. I'm starving. I told you guys about my tummy being a little gross this morning, so I didn't really eat lunch before recording. And that's like a big no-no, because you just, by the end, you're dying. So looking forward to eating after this. And I got to call someone out here that we didn't call out earlier. So I want to surprise this person who's listening. Saxon Miller, you said, hello, esteemed gentlemen and Chris.
Mm-hmm. You guys missed it. I noticed it. Yeah, it was
disrespectful. Noticed it in the moment. I just forgot to acknowledge it.
It was disrespectful.
I am not an esteemed gentleman. Wow. I am by no means an esteemed gentleman. And I'm very proud not to be.
That's just how it goes.
You're like in the, I was gonna spoil Red. Well, it's not a spoiler. Red Dead when they like go to that like really stately party, you know?
Oh yeah.
And you're like them going to that.
Oh God. That it's so funny that sometimes you'll every now and then a specific part of that game will be referenced, and I'll just like be overcome with feelings of just like, damn, that was so good. Why is my EA app starting up? What the hell are you doing?
Did they ever release a PS5 version of Red Dead 2? No, right?
No.
Just
No.
a PS4 Pro patch.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Even the new
Crazy.
Red Dead doesn't have a PS4 Pro patch, I don't think.
No, it
It's
does.
fucking-
Oh, it does? So it runs at 60?
No.
Oh my God.
I think it just can run at a higher resolution.
Oh my God.
It's fucking insane.
That's not that's the best selling game on
Insane.
PSN. Do you know that's the best selling game on PSN right now?
I
Yeah,
saw
I
that
know.
the
Yeah.
UI is not in 4K. Like
Yeah,
the UI
is in
low res.
720p.
720.
It's fucking insane. Look, man,
Oh,
we have to acknowledge that we are in the minority. Like we care a lot, and
We're in the
bubble.
and we should care. It's correct to care. It's objectively incorrect not to care, but whatever.
$50.
Download your fucking pay $50 for fucking Red Dead 1 for a Red Dead 1 port that runs at 30 fucking frames per second with 720 pixelated UI and completely fuck yourself over. Whatever. Who cares?
It's that stinky Switch version, dude. That's what it is. I mean, that 720p UI, that is firm stinky Switch territory that you're getting on PS4.
It's like I told you guys when I got the marketing leak for the game, and I told you guys it's on Switch. So we knew something was up at that point, I guess.
Well, when you texted that to us and I saw that it wasn't going to be on Xbox, I was like, oh. I had a feeling it was either going to just be completely like it was just going to be like what was there already. And it totally was. That's insane. Well, it's just how it goes.
Time to hit the old dusty trail.
I have a plan. we're gonna sell an old port for $50.
$50
and sell 7.5 million copies of it or whatever.
I don't know, Dutch.
It's probably gonna do really well on Switch. I'll be interested to see how.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
People
No, on
buy
Switch. On Switch, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But
All right, my friends, let's get out of here. It's good to be with you guys today. It's good to be with all of you out there. Thank you for your love, kindness, and support of all things Sacred Symbols and Last Stand Media. Patreon.com/Last Stand Media to support us and get early ad-free access to every episode of this show. Sacred Symbols Plus twice a week, and so on and so forth. I don't think I even talked about Sacred Symbols Plus, come to think about it, at the top of the show. That's very unusual. Merch, laststandmedia.store. Thank you for buying Super Perils of Baking. The physical edition, 500 copies waiting to go. Maybe they'll be available by that time you hear this. Maybe they won't be. I have no idea. Until next time, goodbye.
See ya.
take care now.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.